That's a good point. Like, someone tells you're like, "Oh, I've had a bad week," and someone tells you your yellow humor is out of whack. Good enough for me. Okay. Up there well, it's working. I did get a notification that YouTube. Um, I'm just asking, is it moral? Um, and you know, yeah, and and people might think that it's immoral. And I'm kind of in a weird space with this. So part of the reason I wanted to discuss it is because it's something I've mentally wrestled with. That I'm very much not inclined to declare an immoral act in itself, but I also, when I think about it, when I extrapolate and I consider the implications, at least the way I'm posing morality for the conversation, I don't think it's in our best interest. Um, so it's kind of tricky in that sense. The way I posed it when I initially brought it up in the Discord, and I'll see if I can find what chat I put that in. Maybe it was under morality. Um, is I posed it as something that, imagining immortality to be absolutely eternal. You can't stop it for any reason. If you choose to accept it, if you're offered immortality and you take it, you are alive until whatever the perceivable end of time is, and you got to deal with that. And in that perspective, I don't think that's good for anybody, just in terms of basic well-being. Now, if we don't take it to that extreme, and we're talking about, oh, you can extend your life by some odd number of years, or I think maybe it was yesterday, Deniability and a couple other people were talking about Altered Carbon, a TV show on Netflix, that allows people to basically come back in other bodies, live for an extended time, but you might permanently die eventually. Maybe that could work for a period of time. But the people in that show who struggle are the ones who do it over and over and over and over and over again. That premise I would agree with. Like, that over and over is the problem. But if you wanted to be a 150-year-old human, I don't know if we yet have evidence that's horribly problematic. Mhm. Sure. And even so, that's why this is so complicated. It depends on scope too. And there's a quote that I really like, and I'll come back to it a little later when there's more people. But basically, the quote references that, imagine you're in a situation where you are immortal, but no one else is. Don't worry about the reason why. That's just the case. And you now have to contend with the fact that everyone will die except you. Everything you care about will decay and rot except you. And can you still have passion and purpose and fervor for things and be a social animal with that constant knowledge that everything is limited, incredibly limited in your frame, and and that is, I think, very mentally corrosive. I mean, you would really need to have some serious backing to your life to sustain that kind of living. Mhm. Yeah, well, certainly alone, and also, I'll say this, and then I'll let Ultimate Pope get in here too. But like, I feel like the burden of knowledge would be a problem. I mean, there's that saying that history repeats itself, and maybe that's kind of a cliche, but if you've seen people and states and empires and cities and things rise and fall, and I feel like over a long enough stretch of time, you're going to start to be able to see patterns of things. You'll be like, something bad is coming, something imminent is coming. I see a dictator rising up. I see an a large country starting to unravel at its political seams. What can I do about it? And you kind of have to be well enough for yourself and mentally to go, yeah, okay, and
Yeah.
then just know
Yeah.
that that's how history goes.
Well, I think, yeah, and like I was saying, this all depends on what kind of entity has acquired this. And I think it's a good question for everyone who comes into the room. Like, what would immortality be like for you? And not just them, like kind of like trying to think of what others would be like, but them specifically. Like for me, um, like I was saying, like if I found it, like if I found myself bored, I would want my ability to create. I would want to have the ability to create things. At least I would work towards that, to create things, to master, engineering feats, probably create new forms of life, and essentially play, the game of Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. Essentially being able to do anything, and you're immortal. So really everything existence is your oyster at that point. So do what brings you
Yeah.
pleasure. Now some moral agents are going to do catastrophically terrible things, from my moral perspective with that. But it would be interesting to hear what we all would do with that immortality, or what we would need to pursue.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a big part of it, because for anyone who wants to make the argument that it's a moral thing to do, and I'm completely open to that position, then I want them to hopefully also be able to clarify, like, what are you gonna do with that time,
Yeah.
and what's going to sustain you through that time? Because it's my position, based on everything I know about science and psychology and life and things like that. If you just say, oh, I don't know, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I'm probably not gonna do anything, I'll just sit around, like, that isn't gonna bode well for you.
Right.
You got to go into your immortality with some kind of intention, even if it changes over time, which I trust it will. You can't do the same one thing for billions of years, but have something you're going for. Otherwise, I think you're gonna have a hard time.
Right.
Hey, deniability, what do you think?
I just want to preface this with the first time someone brings up moral subjectivism, I'm out of here. But that aside, um, I'm so tired of subjectivists. Like, shoot me in the fucking head, please. Anyway, um, the morality of immortality. Um, is this presuming everyone's immortal, or
No.
a distribution of people are?
We could talk about the different versions of it. The way at least the way I want to start with the hypothetical is that someone offers you specifically immortality.
Just
So
you. Yeah.
you alone have it and you can't end it for any reason. So if you accept this, you are now alive until the whatever end of time means.
Uh, morality. I don't know about I don't know how morality pertains to that question, but if someone offered that to me, I'd say that no, for certain, 100%.
So morality or not, like why wouldn't you want that?
Because all the joy in life comes from connections with other human beings. I'm a huge foodie, right? And I hate eating alone. And I hate eating a good meal alone. I love sharing good food with people and watching their faces light up as they experience that taste explosion. And you form relationships with these people. And one lifetime of watching those people die is enough heartache. Imagine eternity either going without that connection because of the pain from the loss of that connection, or making that connection and repeatedly watching your loved ones die. That sounds like a painful existence.
Mhm. Yeah, I can agree with that. I I think there's a lot of reasons why at least I personally wouldn't take this kind of offer, but to the point you're bringing up, I mean, yeah, to take it, you would have to pretty radically accept that you as a human being are naturally going to care about people, and so you will develop relationships, and all those people will die.
Or the other warring alternative, you stop becoming human, or you stop
Yeah.
being human.
Well,
So
I
yeah,
think you're right. That's the difficult question. I mean, how do you sustain your humanity, so to speak, with with that knowledge, or even if you can get through having that knowledge, doing that on repeat forever.
yeah. And if you think about it, morality is how we navigate societal complex societal interactions, right? So now the purpose of engaging in society and accepting the tyranny of society is to help deal with the of the world and your finite space in it. If that finite space stops being finite and is now infinite, then guess that would have some serious implications on your morality because if you can't end your life for whatever reason, and you can't have human connection because it is invariably ends up being far, uh, then yeah, that I can see that how that would twist one's morality.
Well, and part of the reason I raise this as a moral question, I mean, if we're taking morals as just like a basic, you know, governance of right or wrong kind of thing, um, we've had a lot of people on the Discord with different moralities, and I'm not bringing up the moral subjectivist point. I'm just saying that it it means different things to different people when we say morality, and everyone has their own definition. And we ran through this charade a couple weeks ago, and so especially for the people who take some form of the like well-being kind of perspective, would it be moral for you to do that? Can someone make an argument that it's in their best interest or in the best interest of any given person to be alive that long? And like for me, I'm not convinced that it is. I don't have any reason to think that humans have a solid capacity for that. But I'd be curious if anyone's moral foundation, whether we agree with it or not, um, can support it.
Yeah, I would be
Is
fine
it
taking the immortality and pursuing maximizing well-being for myself and those around me through that process. I don't see any barriers there. And like I was saying to you, Alexander, before that, you know, it can be hard to predict how our psychology is going to react to something like that. But I also don't have any reason to believe that faced with, you know, absolute loneliness or faced with the loss of, like, let's say 20 generations of family members and loved ones and whatever lost, that's going to cause any kind of like existential dread. I would view those as like, I'm really glad I got to have those experiences and that I still have the memories of those experiences. I'm very different than, I look at this very different than how deniability just talked about, you know, I like to have food with others. Well, I would continue to have food with others for as long as I could. And then if I had to create new life at some point and try to formulate that, then I would. Or I would just, you know, have to pursue other pleasurable pursuits that were available to me as I kind of drifted and swam through the cosmos.
So, Travis, I don't mean to get personal, and you can tell me if I am getting too personal, but have you ever lost like a best friend, a loved one, like someone like really close, not like someone you like knew, like your cousin that you like met 3 times in your life, someone like seriously
Yes.
close that you depended
Yes.
on
Not
a
the dreaded
lot?
3 times cousin.
Yeah. Yes, I have.
So do you not struggle with the pain from that loss?
No, I don't. And a lot of it has to do with, um, you know, you have this wish that that person or those people were still around and that, you know, their life wasn't cut short. And, you know, it seems to, for me, like when people die around me, like the way that they die does bother me. Like if I know like a friend was in a horrible car accident and they determined that they were, you know, alive for like 8 hours suffering before they actually died. That's a horrible fact about what occurred. And that definitely is bothersome. And that kind of thing, that aspect of them having to, you know, suffer for that 8 hours, like that part doesn't go away. Like I think no matter how you look at that, you're just like, fuck, if I could remove anything from this, it would be that suffering. Obviously, you know, if you could remove the death itself, you probably would. But you know, I tend to have quite a positive view about, like, if when people do die and their time ends, it's just, I feel so grateful for them and from my own perspective that they had any opportunity to live at all. And I just cherish that so much that it overcomes any kind of, you know, emotionality that may be attached to, like, you know, they got decapitated or something.
So yeah, look, that's fair enough. But do you think that you could survive not merely that tragedy, but all the known tragedies of mankind for eternity?
Yes. I would find pleasure in all of it. Like when someone dies in a tragic way, I find pleasure in those situations of going through my memories with them and going through the memories of them with others. And even if I was at a point where I couldn't do that, let's say my memory was dying on me and I couldn't remember certain things because it's just too long ago, and you know, the brain wouldn't allow for it, then, you know, I would just look at that as just, you know, part of my journey through this immortality, and I would still find pleasure in it.
I don't know. What one lifetime of human suffering is enough for me.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you view suffering, right? I think there's a lot of
Um,
pleasure in that can be taken out of suffering. This is why my my worldview, my moral foundation is based on the positive aspect of maximizing well-being. But
yeah, but there's just far too much tragedy. Um,
I get it. I understand.
uh,
Like
I, I just think I started out with a rosy view of the world, and through having experienced arguably much more tragedy and suffering than you're being, just because of how I've chosen to lead my life and the situations I put myself in. Um, I'm just, I mean, I feel it eats away at my, and having a word to describe this. Like, I want to say humanity, but it's not precisely what I mean. Um, eats up my soul, I guess.
mm,
Like I I I feel myself not wanting to reinvest too much in new relationships because
mm,
of pain from old relationships. And not just that, but like you put your faith and trust in people and you watch it break and shatter. And
sure.
that
Yeah.
happens so many times, you become cynical of people. And as much as I try to resist the change, because I know that I've had really good fortune to have my life blessed with some really amazing people. Um, but if I think about the iterating over an eternity with nobody that can at least sympathize and understand and share in that pain. I think that's a big factor as well. It's not just the loneliness; it's the fact that there's nobody in your likeness to share that pain with. Because I mean, sharing happiness is an obvious one, but sharing pain is equally as important. And
Sure.
it's difficult to share your pain with someone who hasn't had that specific experience and feel like you've been heard when they empathize with you
Mm.
because you know deep down that they can't understand unless they've actually experienced it. Um, so yeah, it just seems tragically lonely, and I think you're ambitious in your perception that you can take that challenge on. I think it would crush any man.
Um,
I think most like a lot of people would be terrified of the idea of swimming through empty space, or maybe bursting outside of our
Ah,
closed
it's
system into the 11
my
dimension
primal
hyperspace.
fear.
Right.
I've
But
had
I don't
nightmares about
share
this.
that fear. I don't share the fear of not having someone to empathize or sympathize with. I think I think for the most part through my life I've done that, or at least I've built myself, because I didn't used to do this, and it got me into a lot of well, I think the predisposition to depression got me into a lot of trouble, a lot of just like stacking monkeys on my back until they overflow over the castle walls. But I've found a way through medical science and to deal with those monkeys internally, as opposed to needing to talk them out with another. And maybe that has something to do with me, like, I don't, and here's maybe a statement I can make about this, a claim I can make. I don't see in my life a necessity for others. but I do find a lot of damn pleasure in having others around, but I don't see that as a necessity.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sorry, I'm skeptical, but Alexander, you want to jump in?
sure. Well, actually, I referenced this a few minutes ago, but now seems like a good enough time. I want to get your opinions, especially yours, deniability, on a quote that I have, and it's kind of long, but bear with me because I think it's relevant. Do you not comprehend the wicked secret of the immortal? All age and die, save you. All rot and fall to dust, save you. Any child you bear becomes a crone and perishes before your eyes. Any lover withers and shrinks into incontinence and bent, toothless senility. While you, only you, never age, never tire, never fade, alone. After a time, you'll lose a desire for passion, for connection with anyone, like a muscle that atrophies from lack of use. And one day you'll realize you've become like them, beautiful and dead. You've become a perfect, unchanging portrait of yourself. Um, any
Yeah,
part of that stand out? Because that to me is poignant.
that, that's exactly where my mind goes when you ask the question. I, it's a curse. You know, like it always makes me think of the old Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times, and you know, living forever. I couldn't deal with that. I just know in my heart it would crush my soul, and as mentions in the quote, you know, it literally feels like just the tragedy that I've had to bear in 30 something years of life. It's more than the mind can task when you think about it all at once. Um, Thank goodness it was spread out in between fucking happy moments and joyous experiences, as I think is the rather strange blessing of life. But yeah, I think even like psychologically, the human mind has a propensity to remember negative memories far more than positive memories. So I mean, again, you just like you factor that out over like a good 30, 40,000 lifetimes, and what might seem like manageable in one lifetime, like if that like has any way of building up, and I would say the way human memory works, it'll build. It's pretty sure to build up into like muscle and emotional memory and the subconscious. Um, I think it'll twist, warp, and crush any human being. Sounds like a
Um,
curse.
bounce bounce around, and then I actually want to get to the another piece of the quote, but hanging Chad, Wise Ape, Pangburn, what any of you think of that?
I would say, do waves despair? Like when you look at an ocean and one wave crashes and another one crashes, do they despair the loss of wave after wave? I think if we were immortal, or especially living a solo existence, it wouldn't be like what we live now. I think we would like, I'd say we, but the immortal one would evolve and maybe take on like a wave consciousness if waves are conscious. Um, and I think personally, like lately, like if I was to die, that I've been thinking a lot along the lines of a consciousness um, without thought or without, I don't know. But the idea that we would be miserable um, as we are now, possibly, but I think if you weren't dependent upon anything and you're just immortal, that it would be a different perspective to life.
Well, I'll read what Hanging Chad has written so far, and then come back around to something. But he says the limitless possibility of despair is matched by the limitless possibility of good, and the unique opportunity to grasp the infinite set of possibilities would be too good to pass up. The opportunity to truly find the limits of human perception and experience is the greatest gift I can imagine, no matter how painful it may be. Um, and I guess what I would issue as a challenge to that, and I think it touches on part of what you said, too, Wise Ape, is for me in the quote I read, the biggest part for me isn't even the despair of watching everyone around me die. It's actually the ending where it says you've become a perfect unchanging portrait of yourself, which for me raises the question, certainly if I was alive forever, I would change over time. I have absolute faith that I would. But would I change enough? Because the world would be changing so much around me, but I would presume that the core of who I am would remain intact. Parts of me would change and parts of me wouldn't. And does that make me too stagnant relative to everything else? And that becomes part of the curse. So either I disconnected or I've just shattered everyone's brain. I don't know what happened.
Probably shattered. You shattered my brain.
Oh, okay. So, Hanging Chad says, or can I, Billy? You try to get it because I don't know if your mic's not working or I can't hear you at least.
Yeah, my mic is working. I'm just busy fiddling with my vaporizer. I'm
Oh, okay.
reloading and racking one because I feel like I need to get nice and stoned to get it comfy in this conversation.
Okay.
But yeah, the, I'm not so sure that. Yeah, the point I raised about like the human mind. I mean, you'd probably be able to better follow this than I can, Alexander. But like, we have a tendency to be pessimistic. It's a survival instinct. We remember negatives far better than positives. That's why we say we learn from failure, because it's been involved into us. Um, I don't see your uh, I don't see your brain changing, as you say, that fast enough to cope with that psychic shift. And I think that it would most likely drive you insane eventually.
Well, and that's a big part of my issue. And Hanging Chad put the question: doesn't that presuppose a stagnation of human consciousness? And if we remove the threat of degeneration, who's to say there's a limit to our perception? Um, I think there probably are limits to our perception, even if we can't identify them yet. The brain is only the organ that it is. Um, and human consciousness would constantly be changing, but we've identified several traits and personality features and things of that sort that tend to be stable over time. And that's not to say that they can't change, but yes, I think what I'm getting at is the point that deniability made, which is that I don't know that I can change fast enough. I mean, especially given, like, to the extent that you can remember your history, and perhaps there gets to a point you've been alive 1,000 years and you don't remember what happened at year one anymore. I get that. But to the extent you remember your history, that history is a part of you. And you have to accept everything you've ever done, everything you've ever been is part of yourself, even if you've changed away from that thing and maybe you haven't. And that's the thing I think is very hard for us to wrestle with. I don't know if a human being can sustain hundreds, if not thousands, millions of years of their own history in the midst of changing and maybe not changing.
You see, that's the thing. Like, as you say, like, eventually you'll start to forget entire years, you know? But my understanding of how the brain works is because we have this need to compress information, we compress memories into just basically our lessons from them. And we have a propensity to focus on the negative lessons more than the positive lessons. So that is my precise fear. Is like you might like live 10,000 lifetimes, and let's just say you're really lucky, and 50% of your interactions are joyous, and 50% of your interactions are tragic, instead of what seems to be the usually 80% tragic, 20% joyous occurrence. But let's say you're lucky, and you got like 10,000 lifetimes of experiences. At some point, you're going to start compressing that information. And as you say, maybe you can only remember back 1,000 years. That means the other 9,000 years are going to get compressed in the worst fashion possible and just end up tormenting you.
Yeah. Well, and it could well be that in the grand scheme of things, you forget many of those years entirely, no matter what happens, because they ultimately don't matter. But then I feel like there's a difficulty. I mean, you really have to be able to master an acceptance that, yeah, 900 years of my life just don't matter. and that's a challenge in its own sense. I mean, in the sense that you would be almost godlike in not even your immortality, but your knowledge base or your potential knowledge base. I don't think I want to know that much, truly. Let me see.
Knowledge is paralyzing.
You, 1 second. I'm reading what Hanging Chad put because he has a contrary argument, and I'd like to know what it is. All this postulation is based on the only time-limited experience we have now. Well, of course, with limitless time, there's no need to change quickly. Yeah, I guess in theory you don't need to, but that's my concern. Even if your perception is changed and you aren't the same consciousness as you were 10,000 years ago, does that mean you would have a negative perception? Not necessarily. I guess, see, part of the trick to this is, I mean, obviously this is a huge hypothetical. I mean, we don't know what would happen because no one's done this. We only have our time limited experience and whatever we know about humanity right now. And kind of the things that you're bringing up in your response, Hanging Chatter, are my concerns. I mean, there's no guarantee that a human being can't change fast enough or would only remember negative experiences or anything like that. It could just be super awesome to be alive forever. But if I'm trying to answer the hypothetical based on what I know, I'm not convinced that it's positive for me. There's too much. I tend to be a risk averse person, so it's too much risk for me to take. That doesn't mean that in an objective reality sort of sense it wouldn't be a good idea. It could be a great idea, but I'm not convinced. I know my time limited life means something, and I know what it means in the scope because I have a beginning point and an end point. So everything in the middle has meaning because I know I have an end point. If I didn't have an end point, I don't know what I would do with that.
So just to like maybe swing it back to morality there, let's put the psychology of it aside. Let's say you could just like live thousands of years, and there's no way to bring it into your life. I presume that means like you can't starve to death, you can't die of thirst, etc., so on. Um, I I think morality for you personally just might disappear because I don't know how to divorce our need to engage in morality from our biological requirements to sustain our own lives and perhaps the lives of our offspring. Um, in the sense that, like providing for food, finding a mate, and finding shelter are infinitely easier in a society than doing so alone. And I accept the tyranny of society for those benefits it advances me. Um, Now, if I'm immortal and I no longer have need of those benefits, and I have all the time in the world, then I would wonder where the incentive to engage morally with society would come from.
Yeah, so okay, so that's interesting. So I guess it depends on, this is such a slope into the subjective point. I'm not trying to sink you into deniability. Um, I mean, it does in part. I guess it's gonna depend on what you consider to be moral. Like for me, I would consider, morality in terms of the amount of freedom and potential for flourishing that you have. So in your infinite lifetime, I would consider it better for you to do what we generally consider as moral actions compared to immoral ones. Don't go around killing people or whatever. Because even though any retaliation against you will have no effect, your eternity will probably be more profitable if you don't do that thing. But I can also see the stance that if you have an eternity, what you do now and how it affects your next, 200 years doesn't really matter because you could try doing it a different way when everyone currently around you is dead. So in that sense, yeah, maybe the morality doesn't matter. It matters in at least a short term frame, and maybe it does in a long term one. But yeah, if you stretch it out far enough, you basically get infinite possibility. So if that's, man, my brain hurts. If that's where you're going, I think I see your point.
Yeah, it's because I mean the why would you accept the tyranny of society? Um, I suppose there was a cool Netflix movie that came out with Charlize Theron. Um, Forget what it was about, what the movie title was, but basically they were these immortals, and they sort of appeared over time, and they were drawn to each other through their dreams until they like found each other, And two of the original immortals, the women, and they lived through the witch ages, and obviously because they survived being burnt alive and all that, they were thought to be witches. And because they couldn't kill them, what the mortals eventually did was they locked one of them in an iron box and dropped them to the bottom of the ocean. Um, and like she like lived in story's time for like at least 600 years at the bottom of the dying and like come back to life and dying from suffocating, coming back to life and dying from suffocating for like 1,000 years. I suppose if you're the only immortal person, it doesn't preclude that the rest of humanity can't do something like that to you to make your existence truly. So maybe there could be morality because you still, on some level, be forced to accept the tyranny of society.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of pivot a little bit because I want to answer something that Hanging Chad said, and then I want to jump to Bruno, get him in there here. But to your point, Chad, about morality becoming inherently altruistic, and then if there's no need to be self-serving because you're immortal, I actually strongly disagree on that. I think if you're immortal, you can be entirely self-serving. There, no one else matters because they are completely temporal. You can do everything for yourself because you are the only constant. Um, but we can come back to that in a second. Hi, Bruno. Do you have any thoughts on the topic?
Not really. No, not really. Just listening.
All right. Well, feel free to jump in anytime with if you think seeking immortality is moral. If it's not, what you would spend your time doing if you had it. Um, Deniability and I are of the stance you don't want it. It's not a good idea. Pangburn is all for it. I think Hanging Chad's all for it. Abe, can you remind me? Because I'm not sure if I know confidently if you're pro or con the immortal thing.
I'm pro, but I accept if we're not immortal.
So the proposition is morality, the morality of immortality. Is it immortal?
And for now, you're the only immortal person. No one else gets to be immortal.
You're sort of breaking in and out. I don't know if it's just me or.
No, I was getting breakup too, but while deniability fixes that, the hypothetical here is that you are offered immortality. It is only for you. You are the only immortal person, and you can't end it for any reason. So you are electing to be alive for all eternity.
Oh, right, I see. And so the next question is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Sort of.
Yeah, is it good or bad? I mean, would you want it? I mean, however you take that, you can have your own personal answer. We all kind of have different stances.
Oh, right, I see. I suppose it depends on the individual that sort of holds the immortality, I would say. So for me, if I was immortal, I'd make sure, things are going great. But over time, at least some stability, but not too much order. If it's someone else, I suppose they would do something different. So for me, it's like immortality in itself. Maybe I'm conflating things, but I don't think immortality in itself can be. You can judge it as. You can even put it on the spectrum of morality. I suppose when you perhaps apply it, then yeah. When you apply it to a personality, then yes. But yeah, that's sort of what I would say.
Just taking the hypothetical, not in the sense of like should a person or anything, but just like would you personally be interested in this kind of proposition?
Oh, right. I see now. Would I be interested to be immortal? No, because you get bored. um, really, you'd get bored over time, and maybe you'd start to do terrible things just to alleviate your boredom. But no, I won't be interested. Maybe not to. Maybe I'd be interested to live a bit long, but not immortality. So.
It's interesting that you say bored because one of my more instant like reasons like saying no is just because I know what at least me the belief that my life will be short has done to my motivation to do something with my life. There isn't a man in my family history that aside from my dad, he's like 67 now, though, that's lived past the age of 65. All of them have died of cancer or heart disease or something. So, like, I've approached life with understanding that the deck is stacked against me. And it's giving me tremendous motivation knowing that I have shorter time. So, I mean, what happens to the beauty of life if you live for an eternity? I mean, surely all that's lost as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Uh, yeah. But it's. I suppose you could make an argument and say, well, I'd like to be immortal because I'd like to ensure stability in the world. Um, that's why I would like to be immortal. To bring in stability, and perhaps your definition of stability is the absence of conflict. Um, you know, quality and all this fun stuff. So you could make that argument, but I don't see it being, you could say, well, I'd like to bring in a sort of utopia into the world. But the problem is with that argument, um, there would be deterioration from the lack of deprivation, I suppose. So, yeah, oops. So,
Um, well, I was gonna bring up a point. Um. Oh, okay. What do people think about it from a? Because this hasn't come up yet, and it's maybe worth bringing up. Like a like kind of a survival of the evolution point. Not to create a rabbit hole out of this, but like in the sense that if you have mortality for whatever reason, well, props to you. No one else has it. So if we take the kind of survival of the fittest sense, well, the fittest is now you. Congratulations. Do with that what you will.
yeah, exactly. The thing is, like, the problem for me with like immortality is like this is where I'm just gonna. So I don't think like humans have any like objective purpose. So for example, like a hammer has the purpose of nailing a or driving a nail through some sort of um obstacle or whatnot. Right. So there's a purpose, like it has that objective purpose. That's why it's called a hammer. That's why it was invented. But humans, we do not know what our purpose is. So if you get like there isn't like well we can so we don't know like we don't have an objective purpose where we say right this is why we were created by deity or the universe whatever you believe in, right? We don't know. So to if you're going to go into the realm of immortality, you would have to create purposes, right? Just like we're doing at the moment, like deniability said. There is a purpose driving his life, which is other things, but the motivator is constraint of time. So we would create other purposes to, survive and move on. So with more immortality, you need to constantly create these purposes to, continue to live, unless you would fall into uh, the trap of boredom, and then perhaps you'd start to do terrible things. So.
Right. Right. Well, and I think it depends on what you determine your purpose to be, and it can depend on moral foundation or just personal taste or whatever. Um, just I'm trying to come up with a good example of this. I don't really have one off the top of my head, but if your if your ultimate purpose for yourself is like, I've always wanted a really nice chair. I'm gonna make sure I have the best chair possible. Well, okay, you're gonna finish that pretty quickly. So you need something else to do, and granted, you could decide, I'd like to be master of the universe. I'm God now. Everyone praise me. You could decide, I want to create the maximum good for all of humanity. Okay, first you got to determine what that is, and how you're even going to achieve it. Um, so, so yes, you'd have to come up with some kind of purpose. Depends on how far out you're thinking, and even so, I mean, if you have all of eternity, assuming human beings don't have some specific uh, descent as a species we don't know about, I feel like almost any goal you're gonna finish it eventually, right? I mean, you'll have to come up with something new after that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if you take the master of humanity or best good for all people kind of approach, what do you do after that?
Yeah, exactly. And I,
Just
I would even
rule.
say you'd go.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think deniability wanted to come in.
Oh,
I, I'm just patiently listening. I know it's a rare occurrence, but like I can do it occasionally. It has been known to happen.
I don't know about Bruno. For me, it's more like I occasionally have audio issues, and I know different people have mic issues. So, you're more than I mean, anyone's more than happy to jump in at any time. I just can't always tell. So if I miss something or talk over someone, it's just it's audio.
What I did, talk until someone disagrees with you, and
Yeah.
then it
Well,
spikes up.
if you develop the purpose to give immortality to others, is that off the table? Like, as part of this thought experiment, is that possible? Because we just said we could probably finish any task that we set our mind out to doing. So
Eventually, ultimately, yeah. Yeah, you could do that. That's not off the table, but when you do that, what's next? Because you're immortal, so time's infinite.
Well, I think it drastically changes the hypothetical because part of the initial hypothetical, what's kind of built into that, is that if only you have immortality, you have to deal with the fact that no one else does, and that you're the only non-temporal thing. If you give immortality to other people, I mean, that's certainly a valid use of your time. But you then now have other immortals to do things with. And so that might give you a sense of purpose or give you a sense of opportunity that you didn't have before. So it kind of opens things up a little bit. You guys talk about that point for a minute. I got to read what Chad says in the chat because he firmly disagrees with what I've said. So I'd like to find out why. Chat away.
Where's your mic, bro? Come like give us your beautiful voice here.
He's at work. He messaged us he's at work, but still wants to participate.
Sure. I'm calling your boss now.
so I think I would definitely pursue that, unless however, in whatever way I got achieved immortality, if like those laws would prevent that. But yeah, that's what I'd like to do with immortality. If I was the only one, is to figure out a way to create something else to be immortal with.
Yeah, if everyone was immortal, that would definitely change up the game. I mean, there would be a massive catastrophic shift in social norms. Because like, what do you do if everyone's immortal? You can't keep producing people. Um, but yeah, I think if everyone were immortal, then I could probably handle it.
Okay, trying to tackle everything that Hanging Chad said here. If you're if you're able to work in infinite time, you could have infinite meaningful experiences and connections. I guess in theory, sure. At least I would think so. Um, and if you personally have the best intentions, you could have the best possible outcome. Yeah, I guess in theory. Here's the part where we briefly drive deniability up a wall. Self-determination and subjectively derived moral meaning allows for ultimate flexibility. And we have no idea what we do because we haven't gotten there. Well, certainly to everything except the middle part, I am on board with you. A person could have infinite connections and do infinite good, and I acknowledge that that's a possibility because we don't know what we would do because we haven't gotten there. Um, I hesitate on the subjectively derived thing. I think parts of it are subjective and parts kind of aren't. But
Truth
that's
is,
maybe another debate, and I don't wanna destroy deniability 2 days in a row.
I don't even think you can like both ways, good or bad. I don't think you can do infinite good or infinite bad. I think actually I would even I'd say more of infinite good because it's a diminishing return, right? Like you do good to a point where the increase in the amount of good you've done does not change the outcome anymore. It's kind of like the pollution. What is this? What am I trying to remember? Yeah. If you
Increasing marginal returns.
Yes, diminishing marginal returns. That's kind of like what you're getting at if you say because you can't really the change no longer affects the outcome significantly, so it's almost insignificant. Um, the change in good. So it's I don't think you can ultimately do infinite good or infinite bad. There is no like you could really go on and on and on with that. I think that's um, that has no bounds. Yeah.
Well, it de- it depends on what you mean by those things. I guess a concrete example that I would go with, and I think most people at least would agree with, is something you could consider bad per se, either in your own view, objectively, however you want to view it, would be to eliminate everyone else. Um, and you now being the only person, not only the only immortal person, literally the only person, is probably not in your best interest. But that's I don't know. I would think maybe we can all agree with that as a premise of infinite bad if there has to be one.
Chad, I just wanted to touch something. Chad, I didn't really I just saw your thing. You said stop being so humble with the infinite time. There is a definition of what do you mean by that? I don't get it. Like you said something about infinite time. There is a definition by an infinite amount of effort to put into the maximum good. I don't understand.
I I think he's saying that with infinite time, there's almost no bounds on putting in the maximum good because you were describing like over time there would be diminishing returns, but there's so much time that I maybe he can type it because he can phrase his argument better than I can say it. But something about if you have infinite time, basically you're removing all limits. So even the sense of like a maximum good, you can always be doing more good because there's always more time. I think is what he's trying to say.
So diminishing, like it has nothing to do with time. It has everything to do with um the change in whatever variable you're looking at. So for example, we can look at pollution expenditure. So with pollution expenditure, let's say at the start of the graph as it declines, $1,000 would get rid of a 1 ounce of carbon, right? But as you increase the amount of dollars, the amount of carbon that the same $1,000 would decrease 1 ounce of carbon by would now be, say, zero point 0.2 ounces of carbon, right? So you've got the same amount of change, but it doesn't reflect the same amount of change with respect to the carbon. So the point I'm trying to make is if you have the same amount of change of good, right, over time, I know time's infinite, but that's really irrelevant at this point because the same amount of change of good won't affect the outcome as much as it did, right? So it diminishes. It doesn't mean it like it doesn't it increases at an increasing rate. This is all hypothetical. I'm not saying this is an actual thing. I'm arguing analogies. But it increases at an increasing rate and then increases at a decreasing rate. So it doesn't mean it's actually declining. It's just you can say it's stagnating to a point where there isn't any significant change. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get at.
I think another version of what you're saying is almost as if like if you had a graph like a standard mathematical graph and you have time on your x-axis and good whatever you're defining that as on your y, if you zoom into any area of time, either a year or maybe 100 years, you might be able to see ups and downs or even a steady increase. But if you zoom out on that chart enough that you have infinite time shown, it's going to look so minuscule in terms of the difference, probably, because over time there's got to be a precipice. I mean, if you're saying that there's some kind of maximum good, I mean, even if things get better and better and better over enough time, that looks like nothing to you as the person who's experiencing it. How is this 100 years different from last 100 years? How is the 1,000 years different from the 1,000 years? You might be able to say year 5600 is better than year 2000, but what does that mean? Because after 5600, you're going to get year 2,000,000. Is that kind of what you're saying, Bruno? Just put another way.
You're right, but I'd say where you got it wrong is perception. I'm not talking about perception. This is all under the assumption that we can measure change of good and the outcome of the change of good, right? This is all under that assumption. Assuming we can,
Right.
I'm saying that over time, yes, the time in this scenario is infinite, but over time, the change. Oh, actually, that doesn't make sense now that I think about it, because it's infinite, right? So, yeah, I see what he's actually saying now. Yeah, it's infinite. So, even yeah, because there is no end. Okay, yeah, I see what he's actually talking about at the moment. Yeah, I see what he's saying. Yeah, it just clicked. Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
I don't. And
I'm still wondering.
so that Hanging Chad should unmute himself and come talk to us. And when his boss comes in and asks him what the fuck he's doing, he should just patiently explain to him that no. His
No,
boss
but sound like you've got a hamburger in your mouth. I can't hear a word you're saying.
Can you tell me? That's so disappointing. It's such an amazing joke at Hanging Chad's expense. I've split it down now. Can you hear me?
Your audio is really messed up. I mean, we can hear like bits and pieces of words, but there's like a lot of static. Or Bruno phrased it as like having a hamburger in your mouth. Like it's something's going on.
I'm just reading Hanging Chad's comments. Yeah, I see what he's saying. Yeah, because time is infinite, right? So there isn't a constraint. So even if the outcome is so insignificant over the infinite amount of time, which we really can't conceive,
Hello?
it would become significant.
Ah, there
Makes
you are,
sense.
deniability.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes, much better.
I'm pissed off. I need to send back this mic. It seems to be breaking out. I got a nice standalone unidirectional mic, and it's just been giving me issues today. But no, I was saying that in my humble opinion, Hanging Chad should stop typing and come and talk to us. And when his boss comes in and asks, Chad, why the fuck are you not doing what I'm paying you to do? Hanging Chad, I would love to hear him explain to his boss how no, his perception of him not working is subjective to his own perspective. And then actually, within Chad's subjective moral context, he is in fact working and not being immoral. I'd like to know how that would go down for him. Put your money where your mouth is, Chad. Morality is subjective. Put your money where your mouth is. Come.
Okay. I'm not Pangburn, so I can't do the awarding points for things thing. But deniability, that's probably the funniest thing I've ever heard on this Discord. so thank you. That is brilliant.
Chad, I would pay money to hear you have that debate with your boss right now. We can auction this event off.
Oh, please. Also, hello, Rouge. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. I'm still catching up on what the joke was.
Just deniability. Oh my god. Hanging Chad is at work, so he's just been typing his responses to us because he can't talk while he's doing his on the mic while he's doing his job, and deniability is challenging him to do it, and it's a whole subjectivity thing they've been having for weeks.
Oh no.
It's so funny. Anyway, um, I guess to briefly touch on kind of the Bruno Chad conversation, then I want to jump over to your thoughts, Rouge. I guess I would be curious on the point though, if there is an infinite good. Like I get we're working on infinite time, but does the amount of good that you can do, again, however you're defining that, plateau at a certain point? Because if that happens, then the amount of time doesn't matter. It only matters how long it would take you to achieve whatever your consideration of good is. So that's a point to think about. But we'll come back to it. Uh, Rouge, any thoughts on the morality of being immortal forever?
Well, I think we can. The way I would approach this is based on what we know for certain, and as nice as nice as this idea is of having a immortal goodness or infinite goodness, sorry. We know I think we know better, or we can demonstrate the fact that any kind of access uh, to to well, I guess we can call it power, right? I hate to call it that, but what else would you call having an endless timeline to face and the possibility to do anything with it? I would call that some form of power. And we know for certain that any access to it by an imperfect human ends badly. So, to answer the question on morality of seeking seeking the infinite or seeking immortality is can demonstrably be immoral.
So I challenge parts of your point, though I still agree with the conclusion. I don't. I mean, certainly, if you have immortality, I would think there's a level of power that comes with that. I mean, there's obviously a lot you can do if you have that capacity, but you could also make the choice not to use it. I mean, someone could be immortal and decide they want to be a hermit. I don't think that's a good idea, but they don't necessarily have to exercise any kind of power. They could completely squander their immortality in theory.
They could, but that's the same reasoning that you can have for a dictator or an addict in the face of cocaine, or in the face of infinite amounts of cocaine. They could, by sheer power of will, squander that, that access and do nothing with it, or choose to do nothing with it. But more likely than not, they'll indulge, and someone with access to forever,
You could
odds
call
are they
yourself
will.
the second coming. You like if like no one knew that it was just like placed on you, you could just like tune people. Yeah, I'm the second coming. When people say prove it, you're like, well, yeah, here, shoot me in the head, and then you come back to life.
Oh
And
wait, so immortality implies being infallible as well.
No, not
yeah,
infallible. We're taking it as unkillable, but but you're not
Okay.
infallible. You still have all your fun human error.
yeah.
Okay.
I would totally play the God King role. And like mostly because I could prove it to like all the skeptics. I could like come amongst the skeptics and say, "I am your immortal God," and have them all say, "No, impossible. No one's immortal." And I'll give them all the opportunity to kill me, and then that will be that, and I'll be God King Emperor for eternity. And morality would disappear, at least for me.
Well, that's still a possibility. What I'm arguing is that it's inevitable. In the same way that the really um, the the idea of a good dictator is so rare that we have to that we can count them on one hand when we look at, I think, the past 500 years. maybe
And
that's
only
me.
if you forget most of their sins.
Yeah.
I actually think it's a really interesting thought experiment, especially when combined with what Bruno said earlier about becoming bored. Like, to almost think in theory, if you have infinite time, I mean, you could do a lot of things. I mean, you could learn everything there is to know. You could experiment with all kinds of drugs. You could do, frankly, whatever. But eventually, you're going to get bored and you're going to run out of stuff to do. And if the one thing you haven't done is exercise your power and become God King, well, you got to do something that you haven't done.
So inevitable, right?
In the sense, I guess I'm not like totally convinced it's inevitable, but I can definitely see the point that the appeal of it is so strong that with infinite time, like you'd eventually gravitate to it, even accidentally. I could see someone doing that. Even if they just start stretching their power or whatever, their influence among their friends, and then other people hear about it, and other people are like, oh my gosh, he's so cool because he's immortal or she's immortal. Like, let's listen to what they have to say, and then, oh look, you're a god king, and you didn't even know that you were. I mean, I could see that happening too.
All right, let me catch up on what Chad wrote in the Discord.
It doesn't matter until he's willing to stand by his claims, as it were.
Well, maybe if this goes late enough, or we do one of those things this Discord does, where things get dropped for a couple hours and then return, maybe chat will be available then. But apparently, that paycheck is pretty objectively appealing. Maybe that's the objective you two can agree upon. Deniability is that everyone needs food to not die, and money gets food, and so you both need jobs to get money to get food to not die. Maybe that's the objective you two share.
Yep.
Hey, Divine Evil. Welcome.
Hello. How you doing?
Doing well. How goes you? Do you have a stance on morals and immortality?
I don't think immortality has much to do with morals. Unless, like you, I mean, if there's a propensity with rich people getting immortality rather than poor people, then perhaps.
So not in that sense. I mean, we kind of pivoted off a little bit, and we were talking about the morals of what an immortal person would do. But I guess the central question was in terms of like, would it be moral to seek immortality? And the way I've been kind of pitching it to people is that different people on the Discord have talked about morality in different ways, and a lot of people use the well-being perspective, like what is moral is what's in well-being for yourself and or others, whoever. So by that stance, you could take immortality as a moral claim, because if morality has something to do with your well-being, is immortality in your best interest or not? That's kind of how this started, and that's why it's framed that way. But if you want to take the stance it's totally immoral and have a rationale, please share that too.
I don't know. It
I
depends.
think
It
that
depends on the
thought
kind of
experiments.
immortality, really, because,
Yeah.
like, I think realistically we only have two plausible ways of immortality: either biological, meaning that we modify our genome in a way that prevents us from getting old and dying, and we're like perpetually kept at a specific age where most productive. Or we can have cybernetic immortality, meaning that we use cybernetic bodies. We only keep our brains and sustain it with various systems and nanomachines, and
So I think
allow.
the thought experiment context would be critical here, because I too had a similar kind of like what sort of immortality are you talking about? So we're talking about, is someone specifically came up to you and only you and offered you immortality, and you'd never be able to end it, and
Yeah.
only you would ever have it. Everyone else would be mortal.
Yeah, we're kind of taking the at least for now, and we can more than certainly jump into like the different means of immortality and if those are good. We're almost taking like the magical genie comes up to you and grants you mystical immortality kind of perspective. We haven't gotten into the science yet.
Yeah, if you cannot die, period, then it becomes quite problematic because eventually you probably would want to disappear and just end it for some reason, and you can't. If that's the case, it may be not a very good idea for your well-being. But it's just not very plausible from the perspective of our world.
No, I agree with that, and I would add that the what the temptation will be if a genie really does pop up and offer us that chance would be fueled by fear of death, and any action really. Hold on, I'm disagreeing with myself. I was gonna say that any I was gonna say that any action fueled by fear of death must necessarily be immoral. However, that's absolutely not true, given the measures we take to survive. It's not necessarily fueled by fear of death, more desire to survive. But I don't know why I had that instinct to say, if your fear is to die and you choose that with that being fuel, then it's necessarily immoral. I don't know why I had that instinct. I'm gonna think about it.
No way, it happens to me a lot.
Like there's a lot of different situations that can happen depending on the type of immortality. If you are practically immortal and nobody can stop you, and you start to use it for in like in bad ways against humanity, just destroy everyone except for yourself, then of course it's immoral. But if on the opposite, you become immortal and you can use it to benefit the society for as long as you can handle it, and then you can choose to end it at any point in time, then it's a whole different point, a whole different story.
Yeah. So I wanna get scientific best perspective, and then we can, if everyone here kind of wants, we can play around with the hypothetical a little bit. We touched earlier on if you could make other people immortal, that changes it. If you can end the immortality, that obviously changes it. But to start, scientific. Hi, welcome, and what are your thoughts?
Hey, I would just go ahead and continue talking because I've completely missed the entire conversation, so I just probably want to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. I guess just to start while you catch up, if someone offered you immortality, can't turn it off, can't end it, you're just alive forever, would you take it?
Is that the only set of facts that I know? Or
Uh, yeah, that's it. You have immortality, you have it forever, you can't end it. There's no strings attached or
and
anything.
we're talking about my current life. I don't get to come back as like Obama or whatever, right?
No, you are you, even as you are now, forever.
Hmm. No,
Why?
no, I wouldn't. Well, if we're talking about literally forever, then the problem would be, um, the first few million years might be fun, but then the next trillion years would be just a complete disaster because, like first of all, the Earth would blow up, and so I wouldn't have anyone to talk to. And then after a while, I would witness the death of the universe, and I imagine that's really boring, honestly.
Oh, you went farther than I did. The fact that you think the first million years would be fun is way beyond what what I think would be fun.
I'm hoping that we colonize Mars and do all sorts of fun stuff. So, well, it would be kind of weird because I'm sure everyone else would kind of evolve, a little bit past like where I am. So it would be really weird, I imagine. There'd probably be a point where I couldn't communicate with other living beings, honestly. Go on. I'm done. That was my 2 cents.
Yeah, so, but I think much like all the no responses, like they're all various forms of, it would eventually get just too boring, and you'd want to end it at some point.
Yeah, so on that line, for everyone, but particularly for those that don't want the immortality, if I change the hypothetical and said, basically, mystical genie, we're still going to stick with that, so we don't get into the science yet, offers you double your lifetime. Whatever your projected lifetime is, I know we don't really know what our own lifetime is, but whatever it is, you can double it. Would you take that?
Yes, 100%. I could perhaps do with 2 lifetimes. It could slow down like various urges, like the urge to have children and all that, But yeah, I could deal with double the lifetime.
That's interesting.
But
I don't know. I mean, I guess we're talking about potential lifetime. Like I can still get murdered or whatever, right?
yeah, you can still kill yourself. I don't know if that's too much of a change, to be honest, because it's literally just like, it doesn't like really shift me out of my current mode of being. Like, it's like, what's an extra 60 years,
Right. I mean, it kind of gets to the eventual question of like, what is your capacity? So it's, it. Let me phrase it this way, because I could ask the question: if you were granted immortality, but you can end it at any time, and the only reason I haven't phrased that, though people are welcome to answer it, is because that seems like a no-brainer to me. Like, if you can just be alive as long as you want and then just be like, okay, I'm done now, that seems pretty that seems pretty simple. The difference would be if it's, you're immortal for double your lifetime, then you just drop dead, or you're immortal for triple your lifetime and then you drop dead. Like, different people are going to have a different stance of how long they think they can go. And to your question, Hanging Chad, no, it does not come with double degeneration and aging. Your body still functions like normal, not normal human body, but like, just imagine the whole process stretched out. So no, you don't have to like age doubly and become like just utterly decrepit. No, that's not part of this.
I just want to address Chad's point about us being so humble. I think the reason why a lot of us are saying no to that opportunity is for the same reason that if given the option to, overnight become head of Security Council. Wait, no, nobody. We don't believe in the UN's legitimacy here, do we? So I don't know. President of the United States overnight. It's a very similar opportunity the way I see it, because it's suddenly you've got a shit ton of power accessible to you. Whether it's well, Chad will still take it. He still wants to be president overnight. But no, I mean, I would say no to both options for the same reason, being that I don't trust myself with that amount of power. Absolutely not. I don't know how this whole thing about.
Power is a curse.
That's it. I don't want to.
The more of it you have, the more of it you have, the greater potential for it to twist you. The less of it you have, I can tell you this from experience, having been both powerful and powerless in my life. You life's a lot more enjoyable without power. One should never seek it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Chad's question here, is he less moral for wanting to take that opportunity? And my instinct is to say yes, but to try and examine it, I'm not quite sure. I would say that I would say that despite your intent, it's likely to corrupt you. So yes, I think it's you're less moral for wanting.
I just to jump in, and I don't know if this is something you would agree with, Rouge, but like my stance to you, Hanging Chad, is I would consider it, quote, immoral in the sense that I don't think it's best for your well-being. I think eventually at some point in your infinite life, it's going to catch up to you in a negative way. I wouldn't say immoral in terms of like I'd condemn you or something like that. If you took the opportunity, I'd be like, okay, good for you. See what you can do with it. I don't think it's going to pan out. But not like I shun you for wanting to take it. I totally get why you would want it. I just think long term you gotta hate yourself.
And yes, power is inherently immoral.
Yeah.
Well, the difference with something like Security Council is that it also comes with a lot of responsibility if you are a responsible person and actually understand it. But the immortality in that case is something that is basically just pure power, and you're free to use it as you see fit. And like from my personal perspective, if there was like I don't know, like a scientific experiment where scientists are trying to extract a human brain and the stem and to introduce it into the cybernetic body, and there is like a 10% chance of failure, and there is a specific amount of time, like a year or two, of scientific overwatch over the case study, and you can be turned off at any time based on if your behavior changes and you start to go on a rampage. If that opportunity were given to me, I would probably take it anyway, because just for the for all the potential things I could learn and do.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys are talking a lot about power, and I guess that's sort of a given for sure. But I don't know. I like to think that I wouldn't try to abuse it, or at least I'd get bored of it. You know, I'd get bored of having that kind of power. And I think what I would like to do, if like assuming I could just, end it whenever, I would just want to see, what humans do.
Well,
I think we have a lot of like progress ahead of us
are you
potentially.
bored now? Like, is that what's happening? Are you
Well,
projecting from your
well, no, I
current
mean,
state?
but like imagine you achieve world domination like 5 times in a row, and you're like, well, I'm kind of bored of it, like 2000 years later, you're like, it's just not what I thought,
Yeah, but again, the world domination is something that you are striving for, or you think it's a given that you will try to get it.
that I think it's a given that I will try for that kind of
Yeah, because
domination.
I don't seriously, I don't give a shit about world domination. I just want to do things for myself, maybe for others, maybe create something or think about something, figure something out, but I don't
Yeah, that's
care
probably
about
true.
it.
I would, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I think there's probably some kind of slippery slope where you start to kind of, I don't know, let yourself take some liberties, like with the powers that you have, and I don't know, maybe you want to be a vigilante for some reason, like whatever I don't know, just there's got to be a point where you abuse it at some point, and then it
Or
just becomes
it's
easier.
more like
So
it's more like a question of if everyone is suited for that kind of transformation, because it's probably not, and
do you
some
not
people
think?
use it for the worse.
Yeah, do you not think that regular human beings would get a tap on you eventually, though? Because like the one thing that's not being considered in this expansion of the infinite is you're immortal, not all powerful, and those two things are distinctly separate, right? So the challenge I put to you is in the one of the sort of dystopian future movies I watched is these like 6 people that are immortal and they don't know why they're immortal. And the eldest two of them, one of them was kidnapped. Well, they're both like arrested in the witch hunts in medieval Europe, and because obviously they couldn't be die, they were like burnt alive at the stake, and they're like declared witches because they didn't die. And to like solve the problem, they took one of them and locked them in like an iron coffin and dropped her
Oh
in the
yeah.
bottom of the ocean, and she would um like the last 600 years she'd been like living and dying, like drowning
What
to
was that
death
movie called?
thousands of times.
I've
I think
seen that movie. I just forget.
it's a Netflix original with Charlize Theron. That's about all
Oh
the
yeah, that's
detail I
right.
can remember from it. Um,
It's a good movie.
but yeah, so like, I mean, just because you're living forever doesn't mean like you have super strength like Superman. Like, feasibly, you're one person.
Well, that's true,
Like
but human
the
expression
other,
of power can go a bunch of different ways.
Deniability, you got your gift. Chad has arrived.
Hello, how's it going, everybody?
Oh,
no, but my gift is your boss tuning you for doing this while you're at work.
Yeah,
You
no,
need to go do it in
I'm
the
outside
office.
of my office building now, so. Yeah, no, I wanted to ask and I wanted to push back directly on your point that you're not all powerful. So that makes sense, but humans' ability to express power isn't necessarily restricted to their physical prowess or their, well, anything like that. Like you remember Altered Carbon, right? The meths with nearly infinite lifespans that are able to express power through the structures that they find themselves in.
Yeah, but you see that's bringing the technology into it. I'm just like working on the assumption that you know eventually, especially in today's digital age, if you were immortal and you were going on exercise bad faith somewhere, even if it was in the criminal underworld, there would be some sort of footprint of it, and eventually, with time, you would be discovered. That just
Possibly,
seems like
sure.
it would have to occur.
But at the same time, like I said, I mean, you can still express your power through other ways. If you're looking at something like Altered Carbon, which if you guys haven't seen, it's absolutely excellent. That expression of power doesn't necessarily restrict you from acting in society. And if you're going to live infinitely, I mean, we did say that you couldn't be killed, so it wouldn't necessarily, I mean, matter. You get a nearly infinite amount of
No.
time to express whatever power you may or may not gather.
In theory, the way I kind of see the hypothetical is that you could be as powerful in as many ways as is humanly possible. So if you want to dedicate your time to becoming just super buff and learning all the martial arts, you can do that. You can get a gun collection. You can accumulate mass amounts of wealth. Now these will all take time, but you have infinite time, so do you really care? And
I was
and
going to
and
say you could do all of it.
and
You just need a suicide
hypothetically,
bomber's vest. That's all you'd ever
right?
need is like a suicide bomber's vest.
Yeah, you can do anything. And by the same token, if hypothetically, because again, you're not all powerful, someone could find out, not like what you're doing. Maybe they kidnap you, they throw you in a dungeon, they torture you for 1,000 years. You're not going to die, but that's what you're spending your time doing. I mean, any of that is possible.
Yeah, no, that's reasonable, and that kind of lends to my point, in which, yeah, I mean, it's a nearly infinite expression of both good and bad, just due to the very nature of infinity. So it really just depends on the person and the person's whim at that point. Which leads to my question that I want to pose to everybody specifically, like, why is power in and of itself immoral?
I don't
Because
I don't think that it is. I think it just opens the door to a lot of potential immorality. I
Possibly,
think
it does. Yeah, it opens the door to infinite negativity, but it also opens the door, when we're speaking about infinity, to infinite good. So it kind of negates itself there. It's a wash.
Theoretically, that's true, but historically speaking, we can't demonstrate that it both opens the door to equal opportunities of good and evil. And I also think that the fact that we behave toward power the same way that we would behave toward a narcotic speaks to what power is, which is just
and
Possibly.
a
there's
drug.
a time delay. There's a time delay in certain things, right? So like you could say the nuclear power might be a good thing, but we started with the nuclear bomb, and it took a while before we got to nuclear power. It took a while for that specific technology to be used from bad to good. And if we're invariably going to start off with bad, and there's presumably some technology out there where the bounce back to the good that might perhaps negate the bad is, well, for one reason or another, might not come. Like, let's say we discover antimatter, and the discovery opens up like some cataclysmic event that swallows the entire globe, and then like that's us, done.
Uh,
There's no opportunity for
Possibly,
it to swing good.
but that
quick
also
side note
doesn't
before.
necessarily denote like an ultimate negativity. If you are immortal and you will exist through all of that, you can apply whatever meaning you want to after any of. None of those events necessarily, again, denote negativity. And Rouge, I want to get to your point. Like, it's you're dead on when you talk about the narcotic and power, I guess, acting in the same way on the human psyche, but you're not quite factoring in the infinite possibility, because as of right now, that we only have such a inconsequential, I guess, idea of what power does, and it's limited by human perception and human lives as they are now. If you expand that to infinity, it literally is. I mean, there's the infinite chance for good just as much there is the infinite chance of evil. So again, it's kind of a moral wash in the long run, I'd say.
okay, so
Well,
Yeah.
no, not really. Where do you see these benevolent dictators? Like
There were four
we
generals in Rome alone that took an entire military and then just decided to give away the power to become farm again.
yeah,
Shoot, as a general rule, everyone who accepts a democratically run society and then all of a sudden appoints
yes,
Churchill and Eisenhower as like a
yeah,
supreme allied commander. Those are technically, dictatorial structures
yeah.
that are beneficial in the long run, and then immediately given away. It's kind of, so power can be just as good as it can be bad.
So
I'm not negating the negativity, but I don't think it's necessarily inherently negative.
here's the one thing that you're obfuscating around, that like you point to quite rightly in the analysis of this whole thing, is the democracy of it. We figured out in the time of the ancient Greeks that this power thing will corrupt anyone. It's just a matter of time, and that when you talking about the incredible power given to the leader of a nation, you want to keep an eye on that. You want to swap them out every few years. And we kind of
They
like,
willingly give it away, though. It's not necessarily just taking away.
I know, but that's the point. Like, I think if you're like a ruler of sorts of the sort for like a period of 4 to 8 years, you haven't experienced power long enough for it to have this massive corrupting effect it seems to have on all people. But I would certainly argue that once you get to like 15, 20 years, and we've got lots of case precedent for this, like say Robert Mugabe. He was a fantastic president for the first 12 to 15 years, and then he just went like super sour, and he's just one of like 10 different current African dictators that were voted in democratically that did great their first 10 to 15 years of rule, and then like consistently all of them like have turned into some sort of like autocratic dictatorship that abuses their police. It's their population. It's
Sure, but
amazing.
this is again just a completely anecdotal example that
No,
means
no,
nothing in the grand
it's not
scheme
an
of infinite
anecdotal example.
possibility.
It's
It
the
literally
It's a
means nothing when you
pattern.
talk
No,
about the
it's a
possibility of
pattern.
infinite.
it's
I can
it's
see a
an
pattern.
it's an objective pattern of behavior represented in many cultures and many countries across the
That has
globe.
never
It's
been
not
tempered by
anecdotal.
infinite possibility. There is
Yeah, but
literally nothing that
okay,
you can possibly compare it to,
oh my
and
god.
that seems like a subjective
He's,
jump.
I think
That I
he's
get it, it
Oh
feels
no.
bad, but it doesn't
But
necessarily
but
Well, if you
implore.
can't compare it to
in that sense,
anything,
nothing
then
applies. In that sense, everything you can bring up is no. Okay,
No, just no. Okay.
so
just no.
if you can't compare it to anything, then we're basically at an impasse as far as that argument goes. I mean,
Yes,
you just can't
but
come to a real conclusion.
that's kind of the point that I'm trying to drudge up and get to, because it's a wall of incomprehensible infinity that no one really takes into account when they're making decisions like this. So like I recognize the infinite possibility. I would still take the opportunity just because that's my personality, but that doesn't
So
necessarily
so
mean it
so,
is moral or immoral. It's amoral, if anything.
so Chad, I asked you again if you truly believe in the subjectivity. Go inside and have this conversation in front of your boss. There's an infinite amount of ways he could possibly interpret your action.
Possibly, but my own
You,
personal subjective morality
there's no
states that
way
I don't
that you
want to
can
bother the other people
objectively
that are around me. So
there's no
I
way
don't
that you can
necessarily want to do that.
objectively predict his response to you. So why are you just
No, you're
assuming it's
right.
going to be bad? It could be infinitely good. Go test
It's
it.
bad. No. It's bad because I say it is. My subjectively derived moral framework says that I don't want to bother the people around me because I want to maximize their well being. So I don't, because it is immoral in my own purview.
So I'm gonna put a pin in the immortality thing. I'm not the immortality, the subjectivity thing for a minute, because we're drifting from immortality. B, I know you guys could do this forever. C, skeptic
Yeah.
just showed up, and I want to get their opinion. And D, I'd like to share with you all that we've all been bested by someone on YouTube.
Oh.
Because
I
Ead
refuse.
on YouTube brought up an excellent point, which is, in theory, if you could get the space travel to do it, you could just launch yourself in a black hole and your immortality doesn't matter.
I mean,
So
I
we've
can't
all
deny, I
been
guess.
bested.
So
You have an out. You actually have an out that involves not dying.
There you go. All right.
Congratulations.
I have a hard time imagining what it would be like to experience like the collapse of space time. That sounds kind of crazy.
I mean, that is so incomprehensible. There's no way. But all right, guys, pleasure. I love talking to you guys. I'm out. I will still be in the chat.
Cool. We'll be watching chat. Other option apparently is to become master of Burger King or something. I think, yeah, you're going to spend 200 years just eating Whoppers. That was his other point in YouTube.
That would like shoot me now. Like if I'm alive for 200 years, I want to try the best food of everything. Like I just want all the good food. Fuck Whopper, Jesus, no, fuck. Like 2 Whoppers is enough for one lifetime. In fact, 4 whoppers is enough for immortality. My limits.
The
Probably.
question is, where are you getting all these whoppers? Like, I mean, do you like create a machine that does this? Like,
It's on the holodeck, man.
it's on the what?
Holodeck. There's
What is that?
it's the imaginary place everyone's talking about, where food is just fabricated, one atom at a time, elements, heavy elements, in this
Oh, nice.
immoral place.
So, skeptic, would you take an offer of immortality if it was given to you?
Yes.
Um,
It depends on what state. If I had to continue for in perpetuity at my current state of existence, no. Shoot me now.
yeah, so that's kind of the hypothetical as we started with it, that someone offers you immortality right now and you're just alive as you are forever. And there's no getting out of it.
Now, with my understanding of the trajectory of science and what's going to be is going to ultimately be the end result, which people will be immortal, physically or digitally, whatever they choose. I think as a bridge until this point to maintain and achieve escape velocity of mortality. Now, I would like that
Hmm.
if that was offered.
Jumping around, just getting different voices before we switch it up. Zombie, welcome, zombie killer chick. Everyone, be excited, zombies here. How about you? Would you take more immortality if it was offered to you, and or do you think that's a moral choice?
I'd say hell no.
Why not?
Um, I think life would get boring if you were immortal.
You and Divine Evil are on the same page with that. That's
really?
what he said.
Oh, that's weird. I just got here, so like I didn't really have a lot of time to think about that, but I just um think that we are blessed with the time that we're here and to use life, try to live life the best we can while we're here. Like, I'm not going to know if I'm not here. You know what I mean? If I'm dead, I'm dead. It's the other people around me, I guess, that'll miss me.
Mm-hmm.
So
That actually
I
brings
don't
up a
know.
good question. You talked about, once you're gone, and it's about making the most of what you have. I've heard some people say that the thing that gives life its value is its scarcity. Like, just like any scarce commodity, the more rare it is, or the more finite it is, the more valuable it is. Do you think that applies here?
Yeah, I think it does. Sorry, I just walked in the door. I'm at the beach and my dog is hurting me trying to get my attention.
That's all right. Um, I'll just jump in and say I agree with Zombie's point that I think the limitations on life, and I don't even mean just the death thing, even just limitations in general, are a huge part of what give import to the things that we consider, or at least I consider, do matter. So for those who are still with us. Does anyone have an interest in changing up the hypothetical, or something to talk about either the technology of it or making it more of a confined how long you'll be alive instead of immortal? If anyone has an alternative hypothetical, feel free to throw it out, and we can wrestle with that as well. Since everyone here has at least answered the initial one.
So I actually do want to just address a minor point about the morality aspect of this.
Sure.
It's been brought up by, I forget who, but someone was talking about how you have the potential for infinite good and infinite evil. And I'm not
Chad.
sure. Oh, yeah. Hanging Chad, that's right. I'm not sure that that's true. I think, so it depends on your perspective. One way to think about it is like there's no ceiling, right? Like if we're talking about, evil being like going lower and good being going higher, there's no ceiling to the amount of good that you could potentially achieve. But depending on your values, there could be a floor, which is where everyone dies, right? Like humanity dies. But then, if you have sort of a change in perspective at that point, then you could think of it as morality kind of ceases to make sense. Because if you're the only, conscious being, or if you're the only just human alive, then you can't have moral interactions. And so at that point, morality kind of ceases to function. So I just wonder what you guys think about that.
Can you go back for a second, Scientific, and like restate that or summarize in some way? Because I think I mostly got you, but I may have missed something.
Sure. Yeah. Think of at least while humanity exists, right? While everyone's not already dead. You can kind of think of it like the stock market. If you have a stock, it can go up by 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000%. Doesn't really matter. There's no ceiling to the amount of increase that you can attain, but there is a floor. Once you go to 0%, that's it. You can't go lower. There's like an asymptotic curve happening that just explodes into infinity as you go up, right? And so what I'm saying is that good is like going to infinity. You can add, theoretically, you can add an infinite amount of good to the world, and there's really no limit on that. But you could imagine a sort of final evil, right? The kind of evil past which you can't actually like go any further, which you might think of as all other human beings dying, or maybe just all other human beings like experiencing torture to the maximum degree, or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a floor. There is an actual floor to the moral evil that you can attain just over an infinite time period. But the caveat to that is, as soon as everyone's dead, there are no more moral agents other than you. So you can't have a moral interaction. So morality doesn't really make sense if
I'm just going to
you're
say
the only
drop
living
the
being.
chat real quick. I can't speak for long, but yeah, you should definitely check out what I'm tagging you in on the live chat.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll jump to that in a second, Chad. Before I read that, I guess just to say to your point, Scientific, I think different people are going to answer that differently depending on their morality. If they think there's a floor or ceiling, or how they would define that. I guess I would agree with you that the destruction of all peoples a floor. Is there a ceiling? There could be. I don't know how to define it, but I think there could be a ceiling on maximal good, but I'll have to think about how I would define that.
Yeah, that makes sense. You certainly would have to define it. I posed a hypothetical, as you are maximizing the well-being of others. Well, I didn't specifically say that, but that's sort of what I was going for. Whereas I think we can all agree, like a moral evil is negatively impacting people. So you can imagine just negatively impacting people to the extent that everyone dies. And at that point, there are no more agents, right, for you to have a moral impact on. So unless you conceive of morality as applying to actions done to yourself or potentially other non-human living things, but then we can just extend the whole metaphor or whatever, the thought experiment to cover all living things, not just humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's the reason why I personally define morality as something that has to do with interaction of people and how they ought to interact with each other for the mutual benefit, and not specifically, not like about animals or the rest of the environment.
So do you think that
or yourself?
Do you think that veganism in principle is an amoral stance, or is it a moral stance?
Yeah, I think it can be ethical or unethical, but it has nothing to do with morals.
I don't know if I agree, but I think it might just be a definitional thing.
Well, I find it just confusing, because it's like you're using two different terms to mean the same thing. What ethical means in that sense? What does it mean? It either means something like more generalized, or it's something different.
I think
or
of
does it mean
ethics.
anything?
I think of ethics as more. Well, okay, so pretend we're not talking about animals for now.
Yeah.
I think of morality as the sort of mental framework that we all tend to kind of agree on or disagree on. We basically contribute to the moral system subjectively, right? And it's more of like a mental thing, whereas ethics is like, okay, so now that we've defined the values that we all share, in this moral system, what actions proceed from that? And I think of that as the ethical realm.
Yeah, but do you mean morality doesn't make sense if there is only your opinion to be concerned? If there is no other people you have to agree with on those odds, then there is no morality to be had.
Yeah, I think of it sort of like, I don't know. I think of morality as like a sort of experience of good and evil, that is done to you or to other people by you, right? It's you can experience morality, but you perform ethics, I guess.
But again, if we are talking about veganism, then how does that work out? What are you doing to other people if you are eating meat? You're doing nothing. It's more about what you do to the nature around you, and that, for me, this is not morality. This is about ethics. So,
I think,
factory farming is not immoral; it's unethical.
I mean, I guess if you're trying to, I don't know, if you're coming at it from the perspective that you can't talk about morality without the human mind, then you if we're assuming that, then I would have to agree with you. But I don't actually assume that. I think that there's a wide variety of forms of consciousness that different animals can experience, potentially non-animals.
No, no, no. Oh, I agree with you. I think that everything that can perceive something around them, they have consciousness. Like even like insects and even lower forms of life have a consciousness of some sort that is as deep as their consciousness, as their perception.
Right. So then I would characterize morality more generally and say that it's like the experience of pleasure and pain as like as it's caused by other moral agents. And we're assuming moral agents being other living things. Like what we're concerned with is the experience of a conscious creature, right? And so whatever their moral system entails based on their biology and their set of desires and experiences, like my dog, I can be moral to my dog by regularly feeding him, and playing with him because those match his desires, and he experiences pleasure from that. And uh, I believe that's a moral interaction. But I don't know. I mean, I think we're kind of dancing around the real issue. I'm not sure that I'm addressing your point perfectly.
I don't know. I just find more utility in making a clear distinction between the two, because otherwise it's like circular between the two terms, and well, both of them really cannot like clearly define each other or
Just to
ourselves.
jumping in and kind of going back to the original hypothetical for a little bit, because noticing we have new people, we have Dal and Bombay and Grim, who haven't
Yeah.
weighed in on this yet. For any of you guys, hypothetically, you are offered immortality. You can't opt out. So if you accept it, you're alive forever. No getting out of it. Do you take it? If so, why? If not, why? And do you think that's a moral choice? Go ahead.
Yes, for the experience, and it'll probably be one of the worst decisions of my life.
Oh, now that's interesting. We haven't had that yet.
Because you gotta understand that everything with the pattern recognition mind, even if I had immortality, would eventually become mundane, and I would probably want out at some point. I think human beings and their brains aren't meant to live forever. It's something about us that we tend to kind of get numb the more we live.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think there's a few people here that would. I think it's interesting that you do it anyway.
Yeah, because it would be one hell of a ride.
That's very true. Dal, Bombay, either of you guys have a stance?
I would probably no, because if it's just me who's going to be immortal, does that mean sorry, live forever? Or I can't remember the exact words you used. If it's just me, does that mean I'm going to have to watch family and loved ones die off?
Yes.
Then
Yes, and Amanda on YouTube brings up has Deniability's brought that up, and Amanda brought it up just now. Like, how many times can your heart break watching everyone around you die before you just become numb to the whole experience?
So then my answer to that would be then no, I would rather just live my life and die. That's what I would choose. I wouldn't want to live forever. Whenever I die, I die. boring, but that's what I'd rather do.
I don't know if it's I
But-
don't know if it's boring. I think the finality of life makes it fundamentally interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
Very true.
There's an element of risk that makes it more exciting in certain ways, and I don't know.
It's only fun jumping off like 100-meter cliff into ocean water if there's the risk you could get it wrong and kill yourself.
Right.
I mean, you talk to people that have lived very long lives, 90 to 100 years old, very content with dying.
Yeah.
The brain is biologically meant to shut down, I think, at a max of 200 if we really press it. And we tend to suffer from our own mortality in that way. So the hard bit is to say, listen, if I was immortal, okay, does that mean like my telomeres are always there, like a lobster, like I just am the same age? And if so, what does that do to me mentally? Am I the same person that I'm going to be when I'm immortal versus the same person when I'm just mortal? Because the brain eventually starts to get to this realm of, being old. I mean, just being old. And you start to accept death. What kind of mentality are you going to be in when you don't accept death? So I think taking the chance, knowing that your mentality is going to possibly change, would be one hell of a ride. But I do know, like I said, it's scary from a pattern recognition mind, that the wiser you grow, the more used to life you are, the less important, the less firsts you have. I mean, like, what are you doing with your life when you're immortal, man? You've seen it all. Are you even going to get out of bed anymore? It's just going to be a period where, like, yeah, I decided to sleep in a cave for a couple thousand years and then come back out again. Like, it's going to be like that vampire mentality of like, and then I had hibernation, because what's the meaning of life when you're immortal?
Huh.
Yeah. And there's a lot of complexity to this, and to your point, I think we've all just been kind of assuming so far that yes, in the hypothetical, as soon as you take the offer, you basically stop aging, just really for the sake of removing the complication of your body decaying. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a separate conversation, but whether or not you're digitally uploaded or you become fully cybernetic or, whatever you want to say, like the form that you're in, sure, would have a substantial effect on how you view yourself. Being in the same corpse, or as I've heard it called once, meat sack, for a million years, yeah, that'd be a little rough.
I call it my spacesuit. That's kind of how I talk to my children. This is my spacesuit. I said, I'm inside, and I go, you're inside there, and I point to their skull and go, that's where you're at, and the rest is your spacesuit. This is what gives you the ability to move around and enjoy the world.
Imagine if you didn't stop aging. The million-year-old man, his testicles would be like swinging while dragging on the floor, I suppose.
You just become a glob of mess, just because like I said, the telomeres are on the end of your DNA, on the end of your RNA or something like that. I think it's your RNA is your telomeres, and that's where your cells are looking to make copies. You run out of telomeres, now you're making copies of copies, and that's where the aging process begins. But you have a set of telomeres that are there, and you use them up until you get to that certain age set of, I think it's like in your 20s or your 30s, and then eventually you got to start making copies of old cells, and you'll see wrinkles and imperfections. So yeah, imagine losing your telomeres and you just become a big pile of gobbledygook. The hardest part is, I think the hardest part is looking at a child that is your family, and you could give two shits about it because you've had thousands, and your respect for humanity could drastically decrease. And I think if I wasn't a humanist, if I didn't believe in people, and that's all I mean by being a humanist, I just believe in people, then I don't know. I think I'd be quite lost.
I think immortality would rob you of a humanist perspective, because I think anyone with a long-term perspective on humanity will see the truly hard group creatures that we are. And I think would lead anyone, if anyone were to observe humanity for any prolonged period of time, I think they would be dissatisfied.
Really?
I mean,
You
if
think so?
we're talking about, well, you have to acknowledge that humanity is going to evolve to be something different at some point, and so there will come a time where you will cease to be able to relate to whatever that creature happens to be, their descendants. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
No, I mean, I think you're right, but I think we do look at humanity right now on a large scale because we're able to log our history, and for the most part, we can see us always getting better, which is why I'm so optimistic. Because you actually look at the goals of humanity to help each other and to help ourselves and to move forward rather than to spiral out into as much chaos and death as possible. There will always be that side of humanity, sure, but that side seems to be getting less and less throughout the ages.
And I agree, but like it just feels like we're doomed to do like 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward. I don't deny that we're moving forward, but our propensity to repeat history and do the same stupid fucking shit generation after generation astounds me in my mere 30 years of life. Imagine if you like experience this over 3,000 years. Like, no.
I think what you're referring to is this interesting Venn diagram that I listened to a TED talk on, which is quite interesting, and it is, as humanity advances and as our technology grows, our liability grows. Meaning, when you have a species that owns a jungle, they can really fuck up a jungle, right? If they're not careful what they're doing and all that, they can make some really bad decisions and fuck up the jungle. Which isn't a problem. Mother Earth can recover and things go bad, and I totally get it. But now we're global, and if we make a mistake, especially as advanced as technology is, and everybody drops a piece of plastic on the ground. Okay, we do that 7.5 billion times across all humans. Now you've poisoned the Earth, right? So I think what you're referring to is, as we advance as a species, our liabilities are becoming more devastating rather than kind of locally centralized, right? Rather than just having a little bit of oil pumping out of the ground. Now we have an oil spill and we ruin the Gulf. Now instead of us having Chernobyl, we have Fukushima and possibly killed all life, in the sea.
Yeah, and
it happens.
people say people have been arguing this that we're only focusing on the infinitely bad, but there's also the infinitely good to bear in mind. And like my consideration is exactly that, like the nuclear bomb. Eventually, it led to nuclear power, and that's generally good. It's a great thing for the environment.
It's advanced for civilization. Yeah.
Yeah. But like the first step was fucking nuclear bombs, and it's a fucking miracle we didn't start a nuclear winter then. What about like our research into antimatter? Like we might discover antimatter and like half a second later go, oh shit, and then that's humanity done.
Pretty much. Bullets up.
Just to jump in a quick moment, I have to step away for about 20 minutes. I leave you all in scientific best's capable hands for modding purposes, just in case things get out of hand. But continue the conversation, and I'll be back in 20 to see where you guys are.
All right, it's party time.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Time to, we're going to do an ad. Is that what you want to do, Alex? I don't know where the ads are.
Fake ads. Go to fake ads.
Subjectivists.
If one of y'all wants to do it, go for it.
There's a list of them, but I can't find them on the Discord. We usually have one.
They're down there.
It's
I wrote one the other day.
Towards the bottom, I think.
Now they're gone. I don't see them.
Can we all commit to having a serious conversation with Travis about the fucking organization of this Discord? I mean, like,
it's a mess. It's a mess.
I found him. Do you want me to read a fake ad?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me. I'm trying to find a good one. Oh no, this doesn't. No, there's so many of them.
And the tail of the donkey. Let's go.
Yeah, just
Um,
any, mini, money, mo.
okay, here's one that Dalzu wrote. And you could have a panger this large thanks to hard work from our baby engineer at Bruce and sex scientist at Zombie Killicheck. I didn't know that, but introducing the brand new panger pills at Pangburn. Personally guarantees these will take your penis from micro uh, to mega muscle. So it was micro shrimp to mega muscle, guaranteed to make your schlong longer than at Loki text walls, thicker than Nivik's personal moral Bible, and harder than Alexander's questions. If you want a Magnum Dong, contact Eli. He keeps track of what's left since he's the only one here who can count. And then it's got that
Well
that
done.
damn meme.
Well done.
That
Nicely
was a
done.
good
I
one.
like it.
Dan Dalzion, I've been thinking about writing a fake ad, but that one was like so good and includes so many people. Like you kind of disincentivize me now. Like, why are you gonna do that to a guy?
Well,
There you go.
leave
Throw it in there.
to Dal Sud to be an overachiever.
For everybody that joins us on Discord, if you go down just a little bit below, is hashtag fake ads. You can write one up yourself and see if we can throw it on the on the podcast here. Sorry for the background noise. My son's going ape. But anyway, yeah, let's just get back at the topic at hand. Yeah, I think deniability. You got a lot to say as far as when it comes to morality. We've had many conversations on these things, and as far as moving into that realm, I understand that it does get numb, I guess, when you have the immortality. I often think like a vampire, right? Or it's just like, what do you do, man? Like you just don't give a shit, honestly, anymore. And that might be your mentality, but is there a way that you could be immortal and still enjoy life? Because there's a universe full of opportunity. You could lead humankind to roads that they never thought of because you can't be killed. You're the man that cannot be killed.
No, but morality is fundamentally tied to its purpose, which is to make society function, to provide us a codified way of interacting, to simplify our complex societal interactions to a point where we can actually work together to trudge through existence and deal with the sufferings of life. A lot of the sufferings of life are related to preserving your life. If you have no need to preserve your life, you literally chop out one of the foundational aspects of why people engage in moral action. And I just suspect that since that's the case, you might very well find yourself amoral if you were immortal. Not necessarily immoral, but certainly amoral.
How much wisdom do you think would be relevant? Like we have current wisdom, right? We don't use old wisdom.
Do you ponder ants? Do you
Are you
ponder?
saying the lion shouldn't concern itself with the sheep?
No. I'm just saying, like, I don't think about the moral existence of ants because no matter what, they can't affect me. So they're just outside of my realm of consideration. A lion's clearly not outside of my realm of consideration, but ants, I just really don't give a shit about them, right? I
The
think
saying
if
is the
you were
lion does not concern itself with the
immortal,
opinion of sheep.
well, no, it's well, yeah, I suppose, but yeah, okay, yeah, if we want to reduce it, yes.
Right.
But I just see why ought you treat people anyway if they're just temporal and they event to nothingness?
And that's the hard bit. You would have your 1000th grandchild and not give a shit. You would have your 1000th interaction with a human and not give a shit. You'd be looking for a new first, most likely.
Or
And to
or
kind of
you
what
may be
kind
trying
of
to
what Hang
change.
Chad, yeah.
You may be trying to change the trajectory of other people's decisions. That's my thought. Is like, okay, I know I've had so much history, like I'm 1,500 years old, and I've seen this time and time again, and I actually kind of like this person. So I really want to give them really good guidance so that they don't walk down this same path and of
Right.
a bad life. And
Mm.
so I'm going to try to lead them and control where people go. I could
How
see
many
that
times are you going to do that until you get bored of it?
Well, right. I mean, or you just become a puppeteer and you're controlling everything.
Or maybe you
Now
just
it's
take over the
really
world.
immoral because you're like the god
Yeah,
because
right.
you're
Maybe
immortal.
we just take over. Like, I'm just gonna take over the world. That's the only thing that excites me today is just to take over the world, and just lead humanity down the path I feel is best, right? So,
Right.
and that's another way too. But maybe, and maybe it is something where it's absolute power and it corrupts absolutely. Maybe it does go that realm. Maybe you do change and you enjoy life. But like I said, kind of what the Hanging Chat is saying in the chat on Live Pangburn Philosopher, is like maybe your mentality will be different. Maybe it's a mentality that you just don't understand because you have a mortal mentality right now. And you're just not going to get it.
Imagine how much time you would need to take over the world without anyone killing you.
Well, you're immortal.
But
Good luck.
But they
Yeah,
can't kill you.
but if
Lock
you're
you away.
yep into
Find a
concrete
way.
and into deep of the ocean,
Right.
much
Just like, good luck.
immortality, huh?
Or maybe you change as time goes and you like vacillate between all of these different realms of like control or taking a back seat and living in your cave or like getting all the money of the world and the riches and controlling and ruling and and then like I mean you don't have to be one
Yeah.
thing.
There could be an immortal living among us right now that's just that can die. That obviously not that they don't die, but maybe they're just genetically predisposed to have stay 20. Never know.
But you could probably pay someone to bury you in a cave, like blow up the entrance and like you're just in
Oh, yeah.
there forever until somebody comes along and they're like, "Oh, we're going to mine for something." And then all of a sudden you come back out. Like you could probably put yourself away if you really want to.
Yeah, deep hibernation maybe freeze your body. I don't know. I just think that mentally wise, though, it's definitely one of those things where I think you'd have you'd have to deal with a lot of stuff like power. You'd have to deal with a lot of stuff like boredom, less
Yeah.
force, and you'd have to overcome those challenges, which just no man has really done these things, So you would have to accomplish these things given enough time, upon which no other human being has done, and the good news is you have till the end of time to
Well,
figure
and
that
that's
out.
what I said. I said, "Hell
The bad
no,
news
I'd be
is you have to
bored."
figure that out.
Like I just know I mean, I feel
Mm.
like I value the time I have on alive. And if I die, I don't really know that I'm dead. Like I'm gone. It's just the other people around me.
I would think the bad news is you necessarily have to figure it out before you go insane, because you can live an eternity as an insane person, which would be far worse.
I think you'd come out of your insanity given enough time.
I don't know.
Or you just like fraction into a billion personalities and live in your own colony.
There's like there's like some kind of like a thought experiment, but I forget where it comes from. But there's this thought experiment of an astronaut in space who is able to live forever, and basically because they are devoid of like all human interaction, and basically deprived of their senses because they float into deep space, they just go insane and their brain just turns to mush. Not literally, but like their mind just
Yeah.
it just
lost
becomes an
within
incomprehensible
themselves.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, you'd have alternative to deal with it. You'd have alternative to walk yourself out of it. And I think insanity is also a state of building as well. So I think it's good to build yourself out of insanity if you have that immortality. Usually suicide ends that road, but I think if you got out of it, you'd be a very wise person. It's a lot of challenges. Could you imagine being the most absolute powerful person in the world, possibly in the universe, and having to deal with that? It's a lot. It reminds me of kind of like my favorite superhero is Wolverine. Logan. I often think that imagine mortality, but imagine you can live 500 years. Imagine there's just enough science, given everything. Now humans can now live for 500 years. The mental consequences and the challenges people would have to overcome to deal with a 500-year life are almost beyond comprehension. It's almost like you have to run multiple people for an experiment for long periods just to see if mentally we can be capable of such a thing. But just given that time span and drastically changing our mindset from a 60, 80-year lifespan to 500 years, how would we care about our kids? How would we care about humanity? How would we care about our great grandchildren? It'd be hard.
You'd certainly have a lot more descendants to keep track of.
Yeah. At what point would you not give a shit about your family tree because it's just so huge? You're just like, yeah, probably got a grandson somewhere. Whatever.
Well, and from the other side, you will never need for a lot of descendants because otherwise there will be so many people that it will become unsustainable when people not die constantly.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
like
interesting thought experiment.
If everyone will become immortal right now, how many children would we have?
So I'm kind of interested in the question of what it would be like, or how would you prepare for like the period after Earth, essentially. Like maybe the sun dies and now you have to live forever. What do you do? What's it like? Is there
do you want to do it with people or without people?
I mean, I guess, well, that's a good question. I was going to I mean, I was assuming there wouldn't be people, and I think that probably raises the question of what is morality in that context. But I also like the idea of bringing people with you for that time period, to whatever extent that's possible. Because evolution will take its course, and
well, if that's the case, you help your civilization to build the slipper ships or generation ships, which just spend hundreds upon thousands of years flying to another star, and you're going with them. Because faster than light travel seems implausible at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
And if you have such an objective and you have arbitrarily infinite amount of time to do it, then do it.
I guess I could just essentially not sleep or eat because it doesn't matter because I won't die, and just work on building such a
I
ship for
I
1,000
think
years.
sleep is very important. That's why it takes 1/3 of your entire life.
And eating. I mean, essentially, you would like hibernate if you don't eat, right? So
Yeah.
you have to pack yourself away if you
That's
don't
true.
eat because you don't
That's
have
true.
any energy.
That's true.
That's how we get our energy. We live
I-
in
we're-
Because being immortal and
Yeah.
unable to move would kind of suck.
This kind of immortality is no fun, you guys. I want to not have to sleep or eat. But no, that's a good point though. Yeah, I guess so. You know, so we can go
So
down
you
that
would
rabbit hole if you want.
you would prefer to have a genetic modification which make you immortal, but you have to sleep and eat, or you would prefer a cybernetic immortality where you have cybernetic body that do not need that much maintenance other than energy, and but you also unable to perceive any like bodily pleasures. Which would you prefer?
I think the latter for me, but feel free to answer, you guys. I think that's an interesting question.
I mean, what does the lobster think?
I don't know. I would definitely take the bet, even though there is quite a lot of things to consider for how would I change in this process of eternal life. But still, I would take this bet because I don't know, maybe just my personality.
Isn't it interesting though that we have immortal creatures in some sense, immortality of not aging.
Yeah.
We have immortal creatures on this planet now. Like I said, certain lobsters and jellyfish.
Yep.
That only get killed by other creatures that don't get killed by old age.
Hydras, I think, are also immortal, if I'm not mistaken.
What?
Hydras.
Hydras?
The real hydras, yeah. They're like pretty simple multicellular life forms, which you can cut into and they will become individuals.
Oh yeah.
And they do not die.
Yeah. The lobster and the jellyfish. Jellyfish does something different, which is they can select which telomeres to actually have, which means that they can change age.
They can rewind to the young age.
Yeah, but we're learning more about jellyfish, how they seem to be multiple animals kind of conjoined together, which is also, I'm trying to understand it more. Certain jellyfish or multiple creatures conjoined together. But lobster is a good understanding of a crustacean that they expect is possibly immortal and only just gets killed through eating it and accidents of it dying.
On some level, we're like that.
Yeah. But like I said,
Sorry,
they don't change. They don't take over the world. They just do their lobster thing.
Yeah, but like, it's a question about brain function capacity,
Yeah, for sure. But given the timeline, I mean, it's like our species is so young to this Earth. It is crazy to think of how some species have been here for so long and they're just still doing.
Oh, that was my point.
They just had not to pressure their environment hasn't pushed their brain to expand.
It's the human body. If you think about it, we've got a lot of bacteria and single cell organisms in our systems, living in our cavities, doing various things. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. We're
in our cavities, yes.
In a sense, we're amalgamated living organism as well.
Symbiotic, yes.
With multiple symbiotic relationships.
Yeah, but we don't allow them in things like our brain. or certain parts of our body, but we allow the environment to help us with our body. Like I said, it's like a spacesuit. You know, those things are not allowed to get inside of our nervous system. They're not allowed to be inside of our brain. So you are essentially your brain and your nervous system, and the rest of it's kind of like your spacesuit. We need those organisms. We also have like things like virus and stuff like that in our DNA as well.
There's a question about how, I mean, they might be external to your brain, but they still have impact on brain function. So depending on the makeup of your gut bacteria and the microbiome that's going on in there, you could or could not be extracting critical nutrients for brain function, right?
Well,
So like,
yeah, the gut biome, and other parts of the body attach to the nervous system and play with your nerves, but that's why you'll be like, hey, I know I need to eat salad, but man, I'm really craving pizza. And it's because your gut is pulling on your nervous system and saying, we like pizza, because you've been eating pizza instead of salad. And if you ate a bunch of salad, then you'd eventually be addicted to salad rather than pizza. But that's just how the gut works.
I'm both amazed and not at all surprised you're now on gut bacteria somehow.
Well,
yeah,
we're just
deniability is the point though I'm trying to get into.
Yeah, so the point I'm like, you don't even need to like go to gut bacteria to like consider it. Like there's very little evidence to show that our thoughts and that our consciousness is somehow distinct from some automaton just responding to events that happen to us, you know.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you wholeheartedly, just because we know that plants, like just the terpenes and things like that are in the air, rather to environmental impacts, to the many things that affect us on the day to day, affect where our mind goes, how it goes, what it thinks about. We also have burned in tracks within our synapses in our brain, that it's like when something happens, you quickly react with frustration, you quickly react with happiness. It's because your brain's been burning this track in your through your synapses for so long. That's just the go-to. So you also have these things that your childhood has formed you to be, because you've been burning this into your brain as your brain is developing. And so you do have the memory of who you are, then you have the environment of what makes you, right? Then you have bacteria that's pulling on nerves, and you have to deal with so much, right? Not just internally but externally. Are you saying that if you're immortal, like how would you continuously like be impacted in a way?
No, I'm just saying I got completely off the immortality track. I can't even remember what my original point was. Like, period.
But the one thing that makes us different, though.
As soon as someone said moral subjectivism, I said I was going to quit. Instead, I chose to play a game. Every time someone says moral subjectivism, I smoke a bong. And you guys have mentioned moral subjectivism a fuck ton, and now I'm fried. I'm so baked.
Deniability.
Mission accomplished.
Don't let us in on the game. We're gonna keep you ripping.
We'd rather you still be here at incredibly high deniability than not here.
Yeah, the one thing
and
that
he's
makes
got a
us
great
different.
giggle when he's high.
I love it.
Maybe I'll join you, deniability.
All right.
In your highness.
Your highness. Yeah, highness. I think the one thing that makes us different than other creatures too is, is mainly just because we choose to evolve our brain power rather than our speed, rather than our eyesight, rather than our hearing. I mean, those things are changing on a scale, but our brains are consistently evolving faster and faster. And we're the only creature on the planet whose brain is larger than our body ratio as compared to all other creatures. Mainly our frontal lobe. We don't know why that is. We don't know how that happened. We're trying to figure that out. But our brain to our body ratio is larger than every other creature. Even given like a blue whale whose brain is the size of a Vita bug, it's got to operate a blue whale body. So its brain is actually rather small when it comes to like critical thinking. It's very intelligent, don't get me wrong. Whales are really smart. So they do have that mammalian side of it. But when it comes to the human scale, obviously not. Nothing really compares. I think it's, and Alexander, if you know anything about this, I think it's like 20% more than the average creature brain ratio. And insects really don't have anything. I mean, it's real basic. It's one of the smallest simple functions for those guys. So if you want to measure anything about culpability and what we can withstand and what we can handle, like I don't see it on the immortality scale. Like maybe right, we might just go insane. Mentally, we just can't do it. You know, maybe it just takes us down and it's like, yeah, he's immortal, but fuck, dude, he lost his mind at like age 500. Like he's just fucking gone.
How do you know you
Yeah.
remember anything
Yep.
from more than about 10 years ago?
Right. You're like,
Mhm.
I mean, great.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. I don't even know who I am anymore.
No, I mean, like,
Yeah, that's a good
you know,
point.
just look back. You know, how much do you remember about high school? Like, do you remember everything that happened, or do you just have like, you know, vague memories? And maybe if you see a
I
picture,
remember everything. Sorry.
You know, how much do you remember from when you were 2? You know, and when you're 80, you're going to remember even less about from when you were in high school. You might remember 1 or 2 of your best friends and some good times you had, but if you're 1,000 years old,
Had
you're
that good fortune. I remember most of my interactions from the 86.
Mhm.
Well, but
It's
then you
quite
also have
unfortunate.
selective memory sometimes.
No,
So if
for
you've
sure.
experienced bad things, you tend to, you know, a survival instinct, I think, is to tend to try to forget those things.
No, that's when they tend to resurface. You need to dive into that shit, deal with it. No, is it
Yeah.
like I've learned this the hard way. Like if you suffer a trauma and you ignore it, it'll rear its ugly head and come bite you in the ass in some unpredictable and most likely extremely unfortunate fashion. If you experience trauma, deal with it, sort it out, because it ain't going anywhere. The longer you don't deal with it, the more of a problem you're gonna have to clean up afterwards.
Oh yeah, I agree with you on that, but I think that there's a lot of people that um, don't believe in that. You know, they would much rather mask some of those traumas with other things, or
Yeah,
you
it's a
know,
bad way to go.
forget about those. You know,
Mhm.
alcohol, drugs, just forgetting.
Yeah,
You know.
it'll come out somehow. Like if you like hold if you're strong enough to hold it down and prevent it from coming out, it'll come out in a drug dependency of some sort.
Yep.
I don't even remember how we got here. Like my brain is fried. I'm like playing hopscotch with my memory.
It's almost like moral subjectivism.
We were talking
Oh
about
my
good memories,
gosh!
and then I brought up bad
No!
memories.
Okay, wait, hold on. You guys can listen to this one.
And I want to be clear about terms because I know we do get stuck in this world a lot. Ethics is a study. It's a branch that studies morality and morals. Morality is a system that social creatures have, and morals is principles that an individual has. Just be
And
clear defining of terms. Divine Evil said something earlier about what is unethical or immoral. Both are quite interchangeable.
that's what I wanted to ask. Like, whenever someone brings up this difference, oh no, you're speaking about ethics, you're not speaking about morality. I'm like, really? Like, what? Everyone that's tried to separate out morality from ethics for me has failed to explain sufficiently what happens with the Thomas God. No, the utility. There we go. the utility of the use. Like, so what if you're talking about ethics or morality? Like, what do you mean? And they struggle to separate out the definition, and they build it up as if because of this definition, what the point I'm making on the morality of an issue is somehow not applicable because I'm really talking about ethics. I'm like, but could you really just rather deal with the point? I don't understand this split between ethics and morality. Surely to treat someone ethically is to treat them morally. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can study my own ethics, right? Which means I can study my own morals, which is basically what I mean by that. Is like I have ethics, which means I study my own morals, right? And then I try to see what is pragmatic, what is utilitarian about those things. What do I get out of them? It's when we think about those things deeply that it becomes quite superior, and that's okay because you're putting that superiority on your old ways. It doesn't mean what's best for humanity; it means what's best for you. You're talking to, and that's moral subjectivism for your deniability. For when it comes to morality. Yeah, I'm going to take you down tonight. So when it comes to morality, then it's the principles, right, that are used by social creatures, and then you have ethics, which you can use which is talking about, what people find moral in a society, what monkeys find moral in a society, what dolphins find moral in a society, in their little societies, and that's the study of ethics, right? And you can look at those ones, and we could take from dolphins, and we could take from monkeys, and we can take from the fellow man, and we can take from all these things and add it to our own personal morals, and then hopefully, as people move forward, you can start to see the patterns of morality of like, oh, okay, well, we treat people like this now. Now we have a court of law which actually enforces that, but you know that it's always changing, and I think that's a hard bit that people don't understand is when you truly think about your own morals and you truly think about what am I doing right? Is this the best thing? And you're applying ethics to yourself, right? The study of your morals. Then you have a chance to actually move humanity in a really good way. No, don't live off oughts. Don't live off the way things should be or things ought to be. No, think about what is best at the time for you and for people and hopefully the effort of health and well-being and wanting the best for people. I think that's a good way to apply ethics to a moral system.
Well, and kind of on a like meta conversational level, I mean, we've been doing these morality talks on Mondays for probably about 2 months now, and the part of the reason they're phrased as morality talks is because, I mean, like you said, Grim, people typically take the term ethics to mean more of a societal thing, though it doesn't always, and ethics being study of and all that. And that's a conversation we can have. We often do, but when I pitched this originally to Pangburn, it wasn't about any of that. These Mondays are the questions that I kind of pose for these are meant to be a more about everyone's personal moral system, your personal moral stance, and how it governs you practically in reality. Doesn't mean we don't have the ethical conversations, but we get a lot further, and it frankly just tends to be a lot more fun when we get into everyone's little kinks about their morals instead of going, oh, well, what's ethical for our society as we communicate with each other? That's a different conversation and doesn't play as well on YouTube.
Yeah, there's incredible moral diversity between all of us in this room right now. And not that some of us might have similar moral foundations, but how we apply those and how that applies to certain moral dilemmas, we might find some differences. So it's really interesting to hear how you solve the moral dilemma that Alexander asks, as opposed to, hypothetically one could do. I want to hear how, Dao Tzu solves this moral dilemma in his life, or Loki, or whoever.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I mean, I like it when we talk about, well, hypothetically someone could, but I mean, when in any of these talks, let alone Mondays, I mean, like ever on this channel, have we reached a universal consensus about anything? Well, never. And that's okay. It's just as good to talk about how each individual person would answer it, because I'm not expecting us to come up with final conclusions. I'd be amazed if it happened.
Yeah.
No, but we've already done the final conclusion. It's libertarianism. Everyone's just like playing the game of how long it's going to take.
Maybe.
On board. It is the final solution.
Oh, here we
Wake the
go.
fuck up,
Another
people.
libtard.
Libertarianism. Need to leave each other the fuck alone and let everyone just be.
But I have a rape fantasy, and I want to feel like I'm being raped, but not really.
Smoke more weed then.
Okay.
You need to chill the fuck up.
That is the proper
I think the other
prescription.
thing kind of scary about that too is that at what point do you think that we're gonna get to the end of a lot of this stuff? You know, like at what point do we know so much about the universe that we're kind of almost done? What point do we get in so much about morality that we're kind of almost done? Like yeah, we're learning less and less. Like there's going to be a curve. There is going to be a curve where it's like, yeah, we know the fabric of reality. Do we know what's beyond it? No, we're still trying to figure out. But yeah, we know the fabric. We know all the laws. Yeah, we understand morality. We understand science. Like you got 7.5 billion fucking people on the planet working. Yeah, we might get to the end of a lot of shit. Sorry for the kid. Oh, she hurt herself.
No.
Grim, don't underestimate the human ability.
She hurt herself.
I hope Grim's not here to like talk to us. It'd be really awkward if like his child hurt himself and he's like, oh shame, and continue to like habitat with people, random strangers online. I'd be very worried if that were the case.
He's being a good dad. He muted and went and dealt with the injury.
Or he's just
Barbie
sitting there
Band-Aid on
like a true philosopher and saying, "Why should I go help my child?" He'll just take a while to.
No. He asks the child, "Why is this pain important to you?"
You know, I'm still here while dealing with this. Okay, you guys are still in my ears.
Grim, I figured you went and got the Barbie Band-Aid and you solved all the world's issues.
Yep.
It was more of an emotional, like groceries showed up and she tried to help, but then she got hurt, I think, because she tripped. And now it's like, I tried to help, plus I got hurt. And it's like a small scratch. So it's huge in her world of like, you know. Anyway, she's 3, so it is what it is. And
they want to be
so
helpful.
big right now. Yeah, she's super big. She's a big girl. But anyway.
I thought it was just a YouTube replay of one of Deniability's arguments in the background.
Oh man, I have to comment on that. That was great.
Banned for bad.
I could have picked anyone on this list, but Deniability was just shining out at me. So
Deniability.
We love you guys. No worries.
Super high right now.
Yeah, I'm so bait.
Nice.
The fucking subjectivists. They'll kill your soul.
Smoke it away.
And surprise everyone, we're dropping Morality Monday. This is now Deniability Saturday Part 2. Go!
I'm here to destroy all these subjectivists.
God, that's great.
Mace Starwalk is in the room. What's up, Mace?
Hello. Don't make fun of my accent, cunt.
I love your accent. I can't get enough of it.
We love that.
You can make. Do you have a good Canadian accent?
Yeah,
I'd love
to
What's
hear
all this about?
Kind of like a cross between American and Scottish.
Like,
interesting. Or
it's a lot of Sawies with a W, and when you're not Sawi, then it's a lot of fuck you buddies, and if it's not a fuck you buddy, and then it's probably like, you know.
I don't get the sorry one.
I don't know. You don't get a lot of the sorries?
No, I don't. I think that's more of like a Newfoundland thing. Like a lot of people think Newfoundland is Canada, and then they're like, "Oh, shaboo, shaboo, shaboot." That's a little different.
You're more Vancouver, so you're more Americanized. Vancouver's like little America, kind of in a lot of ways, where you get a lot of influence from Washington State. I think.
No.
Oregon,
We get
the
way
Pacific
more influence
Northwest.
straight from Hong Kong.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So there's definitely less sorries. Okay, I get it.
I think the Surrey is like Toronto, Ontario.
Yeah, that's probably Ontario.
Oh
Toronto,
yeah. Anywhere. Yeah.
Sorry. How many fuck you buddies do you hear a day?
I would say, like, if I was living back in my hometown, it's like, how's it going? Fuck, bud, I haven't seen you in years, bro.
Well, there's a difference if you mean in his area or Trav personally, because I feel like the Trav personally might be a higher ratio than the average resident.
Yeah, what? It's like Northern California.
It's like, how many times do I hear that in my own head? Every second. We should do, you know what we should do to fucking freak everyone on our radio station on YouTube out? We should just come in here whispering one day, do a whole talk and whisper. But we won't tell deniability and make sure it's a day where he smokes like the biggest spliff before he comes in here. Guys, I can't hear you. Something's wrong.
I mean, if I have to do that now, I am at work. It works out pretty well for me.
That's called lowering your voice. You need to whisper.
No, but then
I'm down.
Bored. Like, the onus is on you to say something to encourage me to engage. If you can't do such, then like you lose out on the miracle of me. It's as simple as that.
Rape culture.
Yeah, I could do that. Who's that guy you went to me the debates on rape culture? I haven't heard him.
Jesse Lee Pearson.
I'll give you a debate on it.
Wait, oh, did I? Yeah, let me check in this.
Wait, who?
I don't know. I think, it was, Yogaba Ghoul. She's our, I think she's probably, a second wave feminist, I would say, in the Discord here.
What's the difference between the waves?
Didn't you see my meme? It explains it all.
Reasonable.
No.
I want to be, let me see if I can find that meme. I'll pull it up. It's on the Pangburn page. God, we're some people
rape culture is in
pissed about that.
Like the practiced culture of like basically just like rape, like in most predominantly in like third world cultures and stuff like that.
No, it's when stupid feminists in the West say that there's a rape culture in places like America and the UK and the developed world generally, mostly on college campuses.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah,
I mean, like they say like the system allows for it or whatever.
Yeah, they say because they can't put the criminals away that society condones it, and to me it's a problem in evidence, and it's not so recently it's not so recently with forensic science that we've been able to be quite successful in catching murderers. There was a long period of history where it's been legal, but we haven't had like the forensic sciences to track down the murderers.
It's like saying we have arson culture or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, it happens, but we're trying.
Yeah, it's not like we condone it. It's just it's hard to prove it, prove the guilt of the perpetrator. And
that's not the only thing. It's really hard for the victims don't necessarily always come forward. So if you don't have a victim, how are you going to prosecute even if a rape did occur? Like and in this culture we try to be victim centered and not push them beyond when they're ready. So if they're not ready, they're not ready, but then on the other hand, then you have a perpetrator out there that is able to continue to, rape again.
Yeah, and like for me, the major thing is like you can pretty much run the same successful social experiment across all of Westernized Europe and North America, and you can have a guy getting physical with a girl in a bar, and I would bet money every single time that there'll be a man in that bar that will stand up and say something about it. That seems to be the culture that we live in. So like the idea that we live in a culture that accepts the rape of women in the West is just it's preposterous. And it's disrespectful to women in Middle Eastern countries that do live in a rape culture. They live in a culture where it is appropriate and right to rape a woman under specific circumstances, and it's absolutely appalling.
I found my meme, by the way. First wave feminism, we want to be equal to men. Second wave feminism, we don't need men. Third wave feminism, we are men.
Yeah, that's a straw man. That's not genuinely how they think, is it?
No, it's a joke.
Yeah. I think everybody needs to start from a libertarian mindset, which is you're a human on the planet. You're under your own responsibility. And I think women are coming to grasp with that in modern society. It is kind of interesting when you think of other cultures that still practice like the caste system and other ways where it's like it's so integrated in their society to have arranged marriage, to have the man do X and the woman do X, and that's what holds the fabric together. But as you look at first world nations, they tend to become more like I said, libertarian, where it's just like, okay, now you're your own woman, now you can do whatever you want, and go. And it's almost like it's a different set, it's a different world. I mean, look at the liberation of women just in the United States. Like, what is that, the 30s, the women's suffrage movement? That's not a long time, people. That's 100 years out of the thousands and thousands of years that we've had a society of oppressing women not being equal to men. Like, it's just because of our species. And
hang on a minute.
Quite crazy.
I would hardly say thousands of years of oppression. It's just thousands of years of gender roles.
Gender
because
roles,
men
right?
had
or a system.
men had disadvantages too. Like, they were disposable. They were the ones
dying in war.
It didn't matter
Yeah,
if they
I
died
would agree.
or
That's
not.
not oppression for sure. Oppression is apt of the law.
There's pros and cons to both of the gender roles. Like, no one has all the benefits.
Unless you're the king.
Well, even big royalty has
if
its disadvantages.
If you're the king, everyone's headed for your crown, chief. You don't want to be the man on the hill unless you can take it.
There would be people questioning your use of a binary there too, though. Just saying.
Fine, it's a queen.
I'm sorry. I have a limit of stupidity I can handle in one evening. It has been used up by the use of moral subjectivism. Be dead if I can bring gender fluidity. My brain will not be able to handle. It will break and split in a schism of
Actually,
epilepsy.
it's funny you should mention that. My brother, he's 10. He's going to be moving up to secondary school next academic year, and he's going to be going to an all-boys school. And that got me wondering, what happens in an all-boys school if, like, halfway through the term, one of the boys decides to identify as a non-binary? Like, do they get kicked out or something? Like, how does that work? I'm genuinely interested.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
You speaking for a friend?
No, my brother's going to an all-boys school next year, and I just wondered, because those schools are allowed to discriminate based on gender, would they be the only schools that are allowed to kick non-binary kids out for being non-binary?
Oh, that's a hard one. I would say private business is private business. Like, I mean, it's hard to say discrimination when there's private business wants to do its own thing. You know, if they're publicly funded, I'd say there might be an issue.
Yeah, they are.
Well, I mean, there are people who want to impose on the private business too, though. So I mean, I agree with you, man. But there are people who are gonna not.
Oh,
So I
it's
reckon
not,
it's
it's not
coming at some
clear.
point in the near future. Some kids that go to an all boy or all girl school are going to start identifying as gender neutral, and it's going to raise
I
some
mean,
problems.
we got Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts here in America. What if what happened to a Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop? You know, it's hard.
They've already
Here's the
changed
thing,
that.
though. We know that co-ed schooling it results in worse outcomes for girls and better outcomes for boys. But boys, interestingly enough, can through other means attain the same better outcomes in an all boys environment, and women do far better in an all girls environment for education. And it's got something to do with specifically when they're in their teen years, when they become attracted to each other, women will tend to play dumb and not excel to appear more attractive to their male counterparts.
Nah, I don't like dum dums.
Neither do I, but like it's not clear that co-ed schooling is better than single-sex schooling.
I mean, they're all right, but I'd rather have a girlfriend I can play chess with personally.
That's what you get with single-sex schooling.
So
Yeah, but Mace, like I've even heard that on Discord. Like I can talk. There was a female that I was talking with on the side from another group, and she was bright. But then every time she opened her pie hole in the chat with guys in it, she had this really soft, sappy way of talking, like very docile and almost a whisper. And I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with her? Like, I feel like there might be people out there that kind of uh, transfer that way naturally because they know that that's been a control feature that they've had in the past with men.
you mean they're controlling the men, or the men are
Yeah.
controlling them?
No, that they are controlling them by that's their control to get people to listen to them more. They know that it does attract a certain element of guys.
Interesting. So it's manipulation.
Yes, total manipulation. And
Well,
that's
in
like
as much as
that would be
all
my
social
guy friends
interaction.
would talk to me about them, and I'd be like, run, run fast. Like, dude, this is all a show because she doesn't speak that way with other women.
Mm-hmm. Jeez.
Yeah, you found a crazy one, is what we usually say.
Yeah, even I tried to steer
Yeah.
clear.
And
A lot of
I gotta be honest, like I came up for most of my schooling, say for like 6 years in all boys schools, and they 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 do a lot, particularly in the teenage years, because that's when like you're going through puberty and you got all like these aggression emotions and this horniness floating about, and they channel it through healthy stimulation. So like the school I went to, you were required to do 2 sports in winter and 2 different sports in summer, and they would literally like keep you engaged, like you'd be intellectually engaged, and then like you do sports after school until about 5 p.m. and you'd just be completely exhausted after homework and eating dinner, and you'd like go to sleep, and you do that 5 days a week, and it teaches you a lot of discipline. And I think that sort of schooling is only possible with single sex schooling because it's taking like energy that would otherwise be misdirected in a co-ed environment and directing it into healthy, positive channels that give you skills for life development. And that is what I would hope would be the ambition of any school.
Did the single gender school bit myself for a few years, and it was pretty good. I mean, the school had problems, but that wasn't thankfully one of them.
Yeah, I think I heard an interesting some interesting facts. Kind of looking at a few different things, and it was something along the lines of like the standard married couple, man and a wife, if they raise a child in what we call the nuclear family scenario, then the stability of the child and the odds of the stability of the child are rather high. If you have something like a gay couple, right, mainly two guys, the odds and the stability of that child coming out is not equal to traditional man and woman. And additionally, two females who are raising a child have the lowest statistic of having a healthy child come out, somewhat average, right? That doesn't have a lot of issues and things like that. And I think what's interesting is we look at some scenarios like that, and we look at things like all boys school, all women's school, integrated school, so on and so on. We don't look at what the best model is, like, oh, you can't have a child if you're gay or whatever. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying let's look at the indications that are working. Obviously, there's been gay couples out there that have successfully risen a child. How'd they do it? Right? Obviously, there's been couples out there, a man and a wife, who have risen terrible children. How do they do it? And trying to find these factors, right, of an all boys school or an all women's school or integrated school, and how the kids turn out and what are the factors. I think it's important that we keep on looking at those things so that we can see what makes us healthy individuals mentally, and start to focus on those as we do run these kind of odd social experiments that humans just do. I think we're one big social experiment, on the planet. And hopefully we can kind of look back at that data and say, we ran an all boys school. What did we learn? How did these boys turn out to be men? Kind of thing.
If we're going on this conversation anyway, curious what people think about religious schools, because not all, but a lot of the gender split schools are religious. I think Deniability actually has said before that he is pro that for various upbringing reasons, but maybe I have that wrong.
I think Deniability passed out.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
No, it's actually a new thought development for me, as it were. For a long time, I was viciously bitter about my schooling, which was done in a Catholic all boys school. Viewed it as indoctrination. I viewed it as highly pathological to my mental state. It was about a good 10 years where, after I abandoned God, that it was highly psychologically traumatic, I'd say. But certainly the last 20 years or so, I'd viciously argue against religious education. But of recent, I've come to realize what I've been talking about recently in my chats, the information asymmetry problem, as it pertains to rational moral foundations. And this presents a problem because I think minimally, at least on an IQ measurement, and there are many other measurements that would disqualify people from attaining a rational moral foundation that is sufficient for worthy moral action. Just on IQ, there's at least 25% of the population that's just not going to have the IQ to engage in the necessary level of rational education to come to a well-founded rational moral foundation. And those people need amorality. You can't just leave them with no morality. And it also seems to be the case that people that are smart enough to think their way out of religious indoctrination will tend to do so. And I think that as a backup plan to make sure
Or
that
hang
you
on a
don't run
minute,
too
look at
many.
Jordan Peterson and Einstein. Those
Oh,
two are extremely intelligent people, and they're religious.
I don't think you make that claim with Einstein, but that's a separate matter. The the point I'm trying to make is, I think because we don't know who's gonna have something that's gonna prevent them, whether it's like just not enough time, disposable time in their lives, or the inability to access the information required for a rational moral foundation. Because we don't know who those individuals are. I think perhaps now, and this is recent, of like the last 3-4 months or so, I've been thinking about this. I think maybe the best way for society to go is to pursue religious education, and then those that are able to use a rational skeptical foundation that they can learn later somewhere in like university, or once they've left school, and they could use those tools to secure a sufficiently acceptable rational moral foundation, can do so. And the ones that can't will at least minimally have a religious moral foundation.
Yeah, I disagree with almost every single point of that entire House of Cards argument.
You're using manipulation to try to mitigate some sort of fear that you have about the world moving forward or progressing, because there's unintelligent people that might act more barbaric and don't have a better moral system to you. And I just don't think that's the best way to operate.
Yeah, it's a pretty awful way
I
to
come back down to
situate
the
it.
Nazi example.
It's a flawed premise.
Every single rational moral foundation, if you have, there's a level of information that you require for it to generate decent quality moral action. So, like
Which is a flawed premise.
Pangburns maximize well-being, my do the least harm. If I have limited information, I can provide a moral justification for Nazism, and that is problematic.
It is problematic, but it happens, and that's why that's the world we live in. But if you look at the world we live in, then you'll actually see that not only are we like doing better as a whole, we're living in the best time that we can live in when it comes to these values. So obviously we're doing something right, and it ain't religion.
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that point.
Religion
but I will
is
get into
decreasing
this.
as things are getting better. Sorry,
Yeah,
Chad,
I figure there should be a whole separate topic of conversation, because I would absolutely love to jump in on it too.
I don't know how you rationally educate the entire population on a rational moral foundation. It seems to me to be an intractable problem.
So I actually
an argument for
cited an
individuals.
example earlier. Yeah. Here, you know what? Around 8 o'clock, I'll be back on to talk about this.
I'm going to bed in a moment.
I would like to join in.
Go ahead, Mason.
No, I mean when we do the discussion. But
yeah, for sure.
I don't know what time 8 o'clock is for you, but
oh yeah,
how far away is that?
About
he means an hour and a half.
An hour
from
and a
now.
half, yeah.
Okay. I don't know. That's going to be about 2 a.m. for me. I might not be able to make it.
Shoot.
I didn't know Jordan Peterson was religious.
Yeah, he's Catholic.
7 p.m.
Okay. Yeah, there was actually a video. There's actually a video
him if
that
believe in God and he doesn't answer it.
No, there was a video that went up recently where he actually started crying because he well, I mean, he obviously feels that he should believe in God, but because he is a very critical thinker, he's obviously having some difficulties with his faith at the minute, and it upsets him. But ultimately,
I watched those videos.
He tries to be a Christian, and that's just proof that
I thought it was Catholic.
intelligence has nothing to do with whether you're religious or not. It's completely separate issue.
I agree. I agree. Intelligence is mainly off pattern seeking and having to understand certain patterns, but that's typically how IQ is found. But I think that also when it comes to just really smart people,
You can be smart and wrong.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes the last area you look in, even though you're really good at your craft, is yourself. I mean, your ego, and most people would rather work on something else besides themselves, honestly.
You have cultures that are scientific, where that's based off reasoning, and you have cultures that have religion in it as well. That doesn't. You can have sections. You can have sections of two different things. It doesn't have to be absolute, and everything has to be mythological. And there's no science.
I would say every culture. I would say every culture has a mix of both. And it depends on the mixture. Right?
My point is, people can be the same way.
Yeah. There's about, I think there's like 5 to 10% of scientists are actually religious. And there's about 500,000 scientists on the planet.
You can be a science and believe in a spaghetti monster. You know.
Well, the reason why it's unfair to conflate religion and intelligence together is that the way religion works is, well, I can't say I'm hugely versed on all religions, but all the religions I know of, particularly the popular ones like the Abrahamic religions, they all work on a system where they teach you not to think about the logic behind the religion itself. You're not allowed to think about it, you just have to accept it. So it doesn't matter how clever you are, if you follow the rules and you don't think about it, then
yeah, but they reason.
You're never
there's
gonna
reasoning. There's facts and logic in their reasoning. Still,
guys, you should go watch. There's a video I posted in what's it called? The epistemology channel, and it goes over some of the common denominators among all religions.
I would say to Mace's point. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, just to summarize, the core features they identify was like communal, like symmetrical movement and music. Symmetrical movement meaning like dancing or chanting or bowing as Muslims do or whatever. But essentially, if you have those features, then it tends to bind a group together around a narrative, and then there you go. You have religion, essentially.
I would say that as somebody who was religious, I would say that the best way I can look at why religion has so much success in the world is because instead of letting people find purpose, it gives them purpose, and then it motivates them to continue living, and then they live for that purpose, which is usually God or gods. And
why would they
things
do that?
about them? Because people, as a social creature, you need to feel purpose. Like if you ask anybody,
I understand,
like why do you go to work, or why do you do anything? It's I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my future. I'm doing they want to.
I hear people look for meaning, and you find it with religion.
Right, so you find it with religion.
That's a natural human instinct to want to look for meaning because we're built to want understanding. But
meaning and purpose are highly related.
But you can get understanding. Yeah, you can get understanding from the environment that you're in, enjoying meaning, in getting understanding. Right. But if something's beyond your understanding, then you just make a mythology to substitute that.
Well, that's the problem, is that religion is basically indoctrinate you into this meaning instead of giving you a chance to arrive at your own.
Rationalize the meaning around you.
Right. And so when you try to take that away from somebody and saying you can find your own purpose, you're good without God. It's one of the worst feelings that you can give somebody. because you're taking away their world, or you're taking away their will to move and to move on, and they'll fight you with every ounce that they have. Even if you let them know, it's like, well, religion is just a big farce, and it's just created by man, and here's the reason why. So you're kind of like, you're just part of it. You'd be like, yeah, I don't give a shit. I feel like I have a purpose. This makes me feel good. This is what I want to do with my life. I can give two shits about that. And it's like, all right, well, all you can do is drop a seed, and hopefully they water it and see their way out the door. But it can take decades for somebody to find their own purpose that's not religious based.
Well, the other thing, just to point out, you get too is, a lot of religions do a good job of dealing with the innate human fear of death. And not to loop us back all the way to the immortality thing, I'm not insisting we go back there, but I mean that's something we ultimately all have to deal with is our own mortality, and it's really easy if someone gives you an answer and a way to deal with that, and there's something beyond this, and you have to do a lot of more thinking and rationalizing and coping and things like that if you don't believe that.
What about a person choosing to die?
That's a different issue, and it would depend on their rationale.
Well, they say, well, hey, I'm not going to do this because that's forbidden. I'm ready to go, like blow myself up or something.
I think people have an issue understanding death, and I think it's not taught very well. And I think that people have this essence of myself, have this essence of knowing, like, there goes Grimm, like Grimm did this, and we put ourselves almost as in this third person. But the best way to understand death is, what did it feel like being you in 1902? And most people would say, I wasn't alive in 1902. Okay, what was that feeling like? Nothing. And that's the feeling you're going to have. That's the feeling you're going to have the second after you die. So enjoy it. Enjoy life. Enjoy it today. It may be gone tomorrow. It doesn't matter if you die. It's honestly not a big deal. It really, really, really is not a big deal, because you're not going to feel anything. It's not going to matter.
You don't know
What
that
matters
for
is
sure,
now.
though.
What matters is today. That's what
Yeah,
matters.
you're going to pit of hell.
Maybe,
burn.
but you know what? You don't know that. So the best thing that's most probable is that you're probably just not going to know anything. Most likely, just like everything else on the planet, you're probably just not going to know anything.
How do you know that
You
you're
wake up
just
in the
not
Matrix.
able to remember anything that happened to your consciousness before you developed a brain?
I don't know. But what we do know is that there's no evidence pointing towards an afterlife or existence thereafter. Everything is inside your head, and that looks to be turned off the moment you die.
I bet you can't remember anything that happened when you were in the womb, but you probably still felt pain.
Sure. But that was because I wasn't able to have memories.
Exactly.
My
And
memory
you weren't
before wasn't
able to
there.
have memories before you were in the womb either, because you had no brain.
Right. So what is it? But the feeling of pain also isn't there. The feeling of those things that formed who I am as a person, because those feelings in the womb formed who I am today. But I won't have those feelings either. As much as I didn't have the feelings before I was in the womb, they never shaped me. They never affected me. And they won't affect me when I'm dead.
It's interesting, man.
So hey, just to kind of
what?
throw a wrench into that point, as a devil's advocate, so you don't necessarily have to have a memory of an experience for the experience to be real. And to give an example, there are some anesthetics that are considered general anesthetics that you become unconscious, at least from your own perception, but in reality you're conscious the whole time. You feel the pain, but you don't remember it when you wake up, and that's just as good from a person's aftermath experience. It's just as good as being completely out the whole time, but that doesn't mean that the experience didn't happen.
Well, like general anesthetics are usually, if you actually feel pain, usually there is a natural response to pain.
Yeah,
and the
they've
general
measured that.
anesthetics, there is no reaction.
No,
So
well,
I had a acute appendicitis cut out of me, and
Ooh.
I was under general anesthetics, and it's not even like a dreaming, because like it's
Right.
one moment and then another moment, and you wake up.
So just to
You
be clear,
it
though,
does
there's
don't.
many kinds of anesthetics, many kinds of general anesthetics. There's I'm referring to a specific one. I'll have to look it up and post it maybe, but there's a lot of different ones, and it depends on what they're working on, and your size and dosage and all that good stuff. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but what you probably had probably is, you're speaking truthfully about what your anesthetic experience was, but I'm saying that there's one or more types that essentially just erase the memory of the experience versus suppressing feeling or consciousness. My
That's
point, though, is
strange.
that
I never heard about it. Like, it's not anesthetics at that point.
well, it is, to the extent that, like, when you come out of it, you have no recollection of the experience, and as far as you're concerned, that's just as good.
Isn't the whole point of anesthetic to stop you from reacting to whatever the surgeon's
Yeah,
trying to do?
I mean, that's a good
my
philosophical
point.
question for you, but I mean, that's I could be wrong, but I'm basically spitting out verbatim what I've heard from an emergency room physician who works with anesthesiologists.
I got anesthetic when I broke my arm and had to have it reset, and I was told not only by the doctors that I wouldn't be like unconscious, but my dad told me that he heard me like try to get up and scream in pain when they reset it. But then when he saw me next time, I was just like drooling in my chair, hardly aware of anything. And I have no memory of it, so.
Yeah, I think
Mace,
that happens.
you think that there could be a
That's
matrix?
some shitty anesthetics then. What can I tell? What's the point?
The point is, the sum total of your experience is pleasant. Like, after the fact, when you look back on it, it doesn't traumatize you in any way. It's as if it never happened, right? And that's the point I'm trying to get at, is like, if it's just as good as never experiencing it, then I guess what I'm saying is, like, can you tell the difference between an experience that you lived through but don't remember, or an experience that you never had?
Maybe. I mean, maybe that's the reason why people have different personalities.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Can
I
you
think it's possible.
clarify what you're talking about with like experiences you lived through but don't remember? I'm trying to piece this together.
Well, I mean, a lot of experiences that you did go through that you don't remember. Say, like, you blacked out because you drank too much or something. Like, the reason that experience is real to you is because other people told you about it and corroborated, like, what happened, right? But if there's no one, if no one's going to tell you what your experience was, and you just don't remember it, then that's almost just as good as never having experienced it, unless there's, like, you know physical things that you can refer to after the fact. But if there's no effect that you can see after the fact that would tell you that you had the experience, and you don't have a recollection of it, it's as if that experience never happened, even if it did in objective reality.
Yeah, true. I think there could be a kind of sketchy area in there, for lack of a better word, where it's fully possible you have an experience. It's encoded somewhere in consciousness or subconsciousness. You don't have access to the memory, and you might have some kind of response to it, but you can't pinpoint where it comes from because you don't have the memory itself. So you're getting the response, but it doesn't really matter that that thing ever occurred because you don't know about it. So you can still get the response and it not actually matter where it came from.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to rule that out by saying there's no like perceivable effect that would demonstrate to you as the person who might have had the experience that it actually happened. Like that would be a fact, or that would be like an effect that you could perceive later on potentially that would indicate to you that the experience happened. But it's essentially if a tree
Yeah.
falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, blah blah blah. It's like that, but with your consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, even just as an example of, people who have the few existing forms of amnesia. I mean, they can do 100 different things and not remember any of them, and if no one ever says it happened, for all they know, it never did.
Yeah. Anyway, my point though is that it gets really fuzzy when you want to talk about like experience as an infant or whatever. Like I'm just saying we should hesitate to correlate memories of an experience with any kind of notion of like truth about reality. Like that doesn't mean a whole lot necessarily, because there are things that we can experience that we might not remember.
Well, yeah, that's why personal testimonies were fuck all.
Yeah.
In the judicial system.
Yeah, and I would argue in basically every aspect of life.
Yeah, they got rid of that, and you have to like kind of prove things with reasoning and truth instead of just saying.
But I do accept the idea that death is not something you experience once it happens. Like it is precisely a lack of experience, as far as I can tell.
Well, let us know when you've done it.
That's the question, right? Like, and the thing, I don't want to like knock religion necessarily, because it's not really the purpose here. But I think one of the key aspects of any religion that has like survived the test of time is that its claims are unfalsifiable. Typically, they're believable enough, if you can get people to sort of buy into the
Noah's Ark is pretty falsifiable.
Right. Yeah. But like what I'm saying, yeah. So Noah's Ark is a good example where like modern science and just globalism, like the ability for a scientist to trek the globe and observe geological features like that was inaccessible for huge swaths of time, and I think the fact that that's no longer a limitation for us accounts for a lot of the rise in atheism lately in the modern era. It's because we're able to finally falsify some claims that were previously unfalsifiable. But I would say that the afterlife is the most unfalsifiable claim. Like, because if you just say that you're going to have an experience after you die, it's like, well, I mean, everything we observe doesn't really have a bearing on that per se. Like, I mean, I guess maybe it does in some ways, because you can destroy parts of the brain and alter consciousness, and so it tends to demonstrate that there's a link between what we understand as the mind and the physical brain, and because those are linked, we have no reason to think that the mind exists outside of the body. Like, there's no reason for that to be true. But but it could be true, and we could never prove that it's impossible. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you just ignore, if you just like, okay, well, I'm good on going because I'm going to go someplace else, you don't know necessarily if that's true.
If the mind
So
can't
you have
exist.
to.
Oh, sorry, no, you carry on.
Yeah, you just have to say, well, what I see is true now is what I should base things on and believe in.
If
Well,
the mind can't exist without a body, where does it come from and where does it go?
Or
Yeah, Cotton Eye Joe.
Little bit of a pivot, but on a similar point, there's that quote, and I don't remember who said it, but about extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence. I mean, we would need many people to die, go to some kind of afterlife place, corroborate each other that they were all at the place, and then all somehow undie to tell us about it. And even then, we can't be sure.
Actually, haven't people? Oh, I suppose. No. But so death is classified as just cardiac arrest for a certain period of time, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
we can't really count that. Those are, there's clinical death, and then
brain
there's like
dead
true
is
brain
dead.
death.
Yeah,
I mean, like dead.
Yeah, brain death is dead, and that doesn't mean like, the brain that's we're close to resuscitating the body and coming
Night
back.
of the Living Dead, huh?
Yeah, but the heart, we can make hearts pump. We don't. The brain is that final straw.
Yeah. And beyond just that, I mean, there's been a lot of cases where people have had some form of brain trauma, and it's altered their mental state in sometimes predictable ways, depending on the kind of trauma. But it completely, I mean, it's really hard to imagine, the mind being separate from the physical brain in any way.
Yeah.
Or like physical body as a whole, because there's just such a one-to-one correlation between what happens to the brain and what happens to the mind as we experience it.
Yeah, all of our proofs and evidence point towards the mind being the emergent qualities of the brain, and if someone wants to come along and propose that it's not, then all power to you. I'd love to see your hypothesis and your presentation, but people have been trying this forever, and the more we discover about discover through neuroscience, we see that it's using the sense apparatus to take in what it thinks it needs, and that thinking of what it needs is essentially what we're calling consciousness. So we got to get a working theory for that in order to kind of move forward in our understanding how to better treat things that are more related to the root base of consciousness, the thing that's driving and doing the selecting, as opposed to these band-aid treatments at the very surface. I did want to say that for anyone who's interested, I've moved on to the dialogue sections of my first book. It's coming along really well, so there will be a Plato-ish style dialogue section to each of my 5 mind clarifiers. So of course we're going to be in the book clarifying How do we determine what is going on in reality? How do we solve moral dilemmas? What inspires you artistically and scientifically? And then skepticism as the babysitter up top. So I'm trying to get this book done, ready for publishing within the next couple months here. And it's looking good. It's going to be very, very short. I'm trying to keep these books as short as I can.
Are you going to make an audiobook version?
Yes, for sure.
Nice.
And I'll be doing the voices, because these dialogues, there's these two characters. There's me, Pangburn, in the dialogues, and then there's B. And I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to replace B with an actual name. I've been thinking. It started off with B because I always imagine having conversations. When I'm imagining conversations, I imagine Samuel Beckett sitting on the edge of a bench, kind of like in the vision of Waiting for Godot, and then I come and kind of sit down beside Beckett, and then I have this exchange of dialogue with him about a philosophical concept. Each of these sections are going to have scripted dialogue in them and some room for notes and stuff. So the book will be, at least this first book's going to be a really fun adventure, and it will, by the end of it, and it'll be very short, it will show you what how I think human beings should go about clarifying their own minds, and also what I think their fundamental moral foundation ought to be. But so I'm working away at that, trying to get that done. If you want to support Pangburn, everything we do, you can go to pang-burn.com/subscription to sign up to be an official website subscriber, and that will give you access to our monthly Q&As with famous authors, thinkers. We've had Stephen Wolfram just in. We've had Michio Kaku. We've had Lawrence Krauss. We're going to have Jordan Peterson sometime within the next few months here. We've who else do we have? We have Wim Hof coming up. He's the Iceman. For those of you who don't know who Wim Hof, WIMHOFF, I believe. It might just be HOF. But Wim Hof, check him out. He's the Iceman. He's the guy that climbed Everest basically in his ginch. This guy's quite incredible. Who else have I been in talks with? Steven Pinker is going to come on at some point. He's another guy who's always swamped in work. But yeah, I'll keep you guys informed. As soon as I know who our next guest is going to be, I will let you know. I've also dropped. Oh, actually, I won't get into that. Still no word from YouTube to get remonetized on the original channel. That's still an ongoing fight. My lawyer is helping out now, so I hope it's just a matter of time before we get remonetized. Anyone out there who wants to do some volunteering for Pangburn, help with some video editing, some highlight clip editing, things like that, could really use your help. And of course, Alexander, thanks for bringing this topic today. It was awesome. I really enjoyed listening.
Send me some raw files over. I don't mind doing some clipping for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mace. And thanks to everyone.
Sounds like the major contract.
Thanks to everyone who's in the still in the room, and everyone who did engage. And we will be. What are we going to do tomorrow? I haven't decided yet. Tomorrow's my day to run a discussion, so I'm sure it'll be something spicy. But I think we might do it on the main channel. So make sure you guys are subscribed over there too, because we are on the new Pangburn Offensive channel today. And make sure you subscribe to the new channel, of course. But
Travis,
let's what's that, Nivik?
Heaven sounds similar to the Matrix construct. It seems like there's similarities there.
Well, yeah, Heaven's got
ideological thinking.
Heaven's quite a bit different though, because it's got particular attributes, being before God and things like that. But let's jump down into the TAV and open this conversation up. For any of you listening out there, you can always jump into the Discord and join us. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying yes, and I'm gonna drop the Discord link again for YouTube.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Yo, we're just heading down to the tab there, Scott.
Up in the tab. All right, cool.
Yeah. All right, thanks, guys. And as always, let art and science inspire.